A man has been practicing diligently for 10,000 years, and is about to break through from emperor to deity. He just needs to pass through the final celestial gate. Then he can wield his blade to cut through the universe eternally. But at the last moment, his beloved woman betrayed him. Just because she coveted his celestial emperor position, she secretly struck behind his back. She almost destroyed the man's spirit and soul. But just when the woman thought she was about to get what she wanted, a sudden change occurred, energy surged, and a flash of sword light passed by her side. It turned out that the man mobilized his entire body's blade chi. He intended to fight to the death to deliver a fatal blow to this poisonous woman. But the result is, even if the entire planet were pierced through, he only ended up inflicting serious damage on the woman, while the man gradually dissipated because he had used up all his strength. In the end, under the furious gaze of the woman, he left behind a promise saying, "I will come back." The moment he opened his eyes again, a towering skyscraper appeared in front of him. Seeing this tower, Chu Autumn-Sword was stunned at first. What is this? Immediately, 2 lines of text caught his attention. The Tower of the Chaos Sovereign. Chaotic Heavenly Emperor Manual. At this moment, he suddenly realized and immediately sat cross-legged to meditate on the mantra. As he continued to comprehend the Heavenly Emperor Manual. After initially grasping the Heavenly Emperor Manual, a huge dragon began to nourish his body constantly. Chu Autumn-Sword's cultivation level soared rapidly to the body refining 3-layer. In just 1 hour, Chu Autumn-Sword went from having his cultivation level disabled to reaching the body refining 3-layer. You should know that ordinary people would take decades to cultivate to the body refining 3-layer. He feels that his cultivation level is starting to recover. He immediately wants to seek revenge on that couple of dogmen. But he had only taken a few steps when he fell to the ground due to physical weakness. At the same time, he also realized, now he is not the opponent at all. The next morning Chu Autumn-Sword was not dead, and the family had already prepared a wreath in front of his door. After he wakes up, he suddenly found himself back home. At the same time, outside the door, there was a continuous sound of a woman calling. Chu Autumn-Sword immediately got up and rushed out upon hearing this. He found a man pressing a woman down with his knees. He kept murmuring in his mouth, saying, "This girl is quite capable." You not only secretly brought Chu Autumn-Sword back, but also dared to secretly drug him. You quickly hand over the drugs to me. Otherwise, I will make you die here today. He watched as his lifesaver was being manhandled by the man. Chu Autumn-Sword, full of killing intent, walked slowly towards the man. "Stop it!" he shouted. The man turned his head and glanced at Chu Autumn-Sword upon hearing the words. He immediately mocked and said, "This little girl is quite ignorant. He dared to wake you up. Let me help you teach him a lesson." He watched as the man trampled the woman's face without any restraint. This thoroughly enraged Chu Autumn-Sword. "It's not your turn to discipline our young master." The moment this was said, it immediately triggered a burst of laughter from the people around. "In a few days, you will no longer be a young master." Immediately after, the man took out a scroll and confidently said, "Did you see it? Grand Elder has decided to hold a major competition within the clan in 10 days, and then decide on the position of the new young master. He threatened that in 10 days, he will no longer be the young master of the Chu family." So Chu River acted unscrupulously and bullied the people around Chu Autumn-Sword. Chu Autumn-Sword quickly stepped forward to help the maidservant up from the ground. "Before the major family competition, I am still the young master of the Chu family. I order you to kneel down immediately in my capacity as the young master and apologize to my maidservant." At this moment, the servant next to Chu River spoke sarcastically. "In this world, masters do not kneel down to their servants." Chu River dares to show off in front of a waste with no cultivation level. He immediately became angry and irritable. He then calmed down, gathered his strength, and shouted angrily, You dare to insult me like this? Today, I must make you kneel down and call me Grandpa. I am not afraid of Chu Autumn-Sword's attack on Chu River at all. He raised his hand and counterattacked with a punch. But as their fists met, a swift and fierce hardship immediately caused Chu River to step back several times. Chu River, who had just managed to stabilize his stance, suddenly felt a numbness in his arms. Didn't the clan announce that Chu Autumn-Sword had lost all his cultivation level? What's happening now? At the same time, Chu Autumn-Sword once again ordered Chu River as the young master. Are you going to kneel down voluntarily, or should I beat you until you kneel down? Several guards who came with Chu River were shocked to see Chu Autumn-Sword punch Chu River back. Does the young master still have a high cultivation level? If we had known earlier, we wouldn't have followed young master Chu River. Chu River, in order to save face, shouted at Chu Autumn-Sword. Right now, you are at most just a waste at the body refining 3-layer. If not for my carelessness, you would have died long ago. He then called upon the spiritual chi all over his body to gather on his fist. He rushed towards Chu Autumn-Sword again. The turbulent spiritual chi all around made everyone present suddenly understand that this was Chu River's ultimate secret technique. Soulbreaker Fist. Our protagonist is facing Chu River at the body refining 4-layer. Chu Autumn-Sword was struck by a single punch from the body, causing his nose to bleed. Then he raised his leg and kicked him out directly. Chu River, who was beaten black and blue, didn't understand why he was so badly injured even though the other party only had body refining 3-layer strength. At the same time, Chu Autumn-Sword stepped forward slowly and said, You better scram now. Chu River was being carried away by someone, while angrily warning Chu Autumn-Sword. I will report this to the Grand Elder. Let's see how long you can remain arrogant. The maid by his side saw that her young master was seriously injured but still overwhelming Chu River. She immediately looked at him with a lovesick expression. The two of them chatted happily in the garden, unaware that their previous battle had already been secretly observed by a young man. The next morning at dawn, after Chu Autumn-Sword took 50 body tempering pills, his cultivation level breakthrough to the body refining 4th layer overnight. So he wasted no time in pouring out all the body tempering pills from the storage bag. With his current cultivation level, he can only handle trash like Chu River at most. If he continues to cultivate at his current speed, he will be able to restore his previous strength in at most half a year. So Chu Autumn-Sword devoured all the Dan pills on his body in one breath. Just then, the maid painting-like suddenly walked in with a bowl of medicine and said, Young master, it's time to take your medicine. However, when she saw Chu Autumn-Sword breaking through another stage so quickly, she was amazed. To quickly advance to the next stage, Chu Autumn-Sword thought to himself, I will first go to the Chu family Dan pavilion to get some Dan pills. The news of Chu Autumn-Sword defeating Chu River has also spread. Pavilion Elder heard that Chu Autumn-Sword did it effortlessly. He easily broke through the pressure technique of Chu River with the Soulbreaker Fist, causing Pavilion Elder to sigh with emotion. If his cultivation level is truly disabled, then I, from Dan Pavilion, will stand by Grand Elder's side. But if this young man is intentionally hiding his true strength, then it's hard to say. At that moment, Chu Autumn-Sword entered Dan Pavilion with painting-like. Pavilion Elder, where are you? Why hasn't the young master come out to greet Pavilion Elder? Hearing this, he quickly stepped forward and respectfully asked, I wonder what brings the young master to our Dan Pavilion today. In his words, he did not forget to carefully size up this former genius. Pavilion Elder sensed that Chu Autumn-Sword indeed only had the cultivation level of the body refining stage. In his heart, he also found the answer. The disparity between him now and his past was like night and day. It seemed like he would have a hard time achieving much in the future. Upon learning that Chu Autumn-Sword came to obtain the Dan pill, Pavilion Elder immediately ordered the Dan servant to fetch the Dan pill. In his words, he also seized the opportunity to give a meaningful glance to the Dan servant. Seeing this, the young medicine boy immediately understood. A moment later, a tiny drug bottle the size of a peanut was handed to Chu Autumn-Sword. Chu Autumn-Sword picked up the bottle of Dan pill and took a look. He found that there were only 6 body-tempering Dan inside, which surprised him. "Elder, what do you mean by this?" Painting Like saw the young master being insulted and immediately questioned Elder. The chi-gathering pill used by the young master before contained 3 pills, and the difference in medicinal effects is not just 10 times. What are your intentions, after all? The pavilion elder explained that the distribution of the Dan pill is determined by the cultivation level. Currently, the young master can only obtain these based on his cultivation level. Chu Autumn-Sword, upon hearing this, naturally understands the old man's intentions. Therefore, he did not entangle himself with the old man and left. The Dan Pavilion Talisman and Formation are the highest martial arts in the celestial martial land. Mastering one type of talisman allows one to roam freely throughout the celestial martial land. However, within the young man's body lies a complete set of talisman and formation heritage, which includes not only water, fire, wind, and teleportation attack talismans and formations. He even included the extremely rare Dan talisman and formation inside. The youth was originally the young master of the 4 major families of Celestial Water City. Unexpectedly, he was persecuted by bandits. It led to his meridians being completely destroyed and his cultivation level lost. By a coincidence, a huge tower suddenly entered his body. The entire tower soared into the clouds, with the surrounding area dark to the extreme. This is Chu Autumn-Sword's second visit here. When he first came here, the Tower of the Chaos Sovereign not only helped him reshape his meridians, but also repaired his dantian. And it also raised him from the cultivation level that had been abolished. Breakthrough to body refining 3-layer. So he came this time and decided to enter the Tower of the Chaos Sovereign to take a look. Maybe there are great opportunities waiting for him inside. As soon as he opened the door of the first level of the tower, Chu Autumn-Sword's eyes lit up. This turned out to be the inheritance of the origin of 10,000 Taoist talisman and formation. The various talismans and formations within the formation alone shocked Chu Autumn-Sword immensely. After all, talismans and formations were the supreme arts of the celestial martial land. And the origin of 10,000 Taoist talisman and formation is the sum of all talismans and formations in the world. Chu Autumn-Sword raised his hand and waved, taking out a paper talisman from the origin of 10,000 Taoist talisman and formation. Chu Autumn-Sword, as the young master of the 4 major families. He naturally recognized this talisman and formation. This is actually a very rare Dan talisman and formation. Dan Alchemist is an extremely rare presence in the entire celestial martial land. So Chu Autumn-Sword thought, if I could comprehend this Dan talisman and formation, then in the future, no matter what Dan pill I want, I will not have to worry. Thinking of this, Chu Autumn-Sword immediately cross-legged and sat down to comprehend Dan talisman and formation, not knowing how long had passed. Chu Autumn-Sword finally comprehended Dan talisman and formation, but the difficulty was extremely high for him. If it weren't for him mastering the chaotic Heavenly Emperor manual, he estimates that it will take at least several decades to comprehend Dan talisman and formation. Now he just needs to find some Dan refining materials, and he can refine the body-tempering Dan. The next morning, a young man picked up a talisman and carefully examined it. It turned out to be Chu Autumn-Sword selling talismans at a stall. He told the person in front of him that the strength enhancement talisman he refined could double the user's strength. At that moment, a voice suddenly came from a distance. Double the strength. Who is he trying to deceive? Unexpectedly, the prominent young master of the Chu family, once the top genius of Celestial Water City, has now fallen to the point of deceiving and swindling others. The person who came naturally recognized him. This person is none other than the younger brother of the venomous woman Lu Heaven Jade, Lu Floating. At the same time, the 2 attendants beside Lu Floating sarcastically said, "You are such a waste. You are not even a martial artist now, and yet shamelessly claim that you have drawn a talisman that can double your strength." Exactly, our young master is a first-grade talisman master in Skywater County. You dare to sell fake talismans right under his nose. You are simply overestimating yourself. Upon hearing this, Lu Floating immediately pointed at Chu Autumn-Sword and sarcastically said, Chu Autumn-Sword, if you are short of money, come and kowtow to me. Perhaps I will generously reward you with some spare change. Chu Autumn-Sword simply replied indifferently, A bunch of mad dogs. If you know what's good for you, then stay far away from me and don't interfere with my business. Chu Autumn-Sword's words directly broke through Lu Floating's defenses. He immediately opened the folding fan and rushed towards Chu Autumn-Sword. Facing Lu Floating's attack, Chu Autumn-Sword instantly dodged to the side. He punched towards Lu Floating with mountain-splitting fist as he followed through. Chu Autumn-Sword punches very quickly. Lu Floating couldn't react in time due to the rapid speed, only hearing the sound of bones shattering. His arm was completely disabled. Lu Floating looked at his severely twisted arm. He gritted his teeth and groaned in pain. Then he fell to the ground and cried out loudly, seeing their young master seriously injured by a punch from Chu Autumn-Sword. They found it hard to believe their eyes for a moment. Wasn't it said that Chu Autumn-Sword's dantian shattered and his cultivation level was completely lost? Chu Autumn-Sword did not want to let Lu Floating go just like that. He only saw him bend down and stare at him tightly. Your sister, Lu Heaven Jade, owes me a debt. Today, I will first take some interest from you. Just as Chu Autumn-Sword was about to act, a voice suddenly came from behind him, saying, Stop! Immediately, a sword chi slashed through the void. It headed straight for Chu Autumn-Sword. The incoming person is none other than Spiritual Talisman Pavilion Enforcer Elder Lien Ninehills. Lu Floating saw Elder of the Spiritual Talisman Pavilion and immediately blurted out, Elder Liang, help! Chu Autumn-Sword has gone crazy and wants to kill me. Upon hearing this, Enforcer Elder's face suddenly darkened. Chu Autumn-Sword, do you have any last words? Chu Autumn-Sword looked at the ground torn apart by sword chi. He immediately questioned Enforcer Elder Liang. Why did you attack me without any reason? Enforcer Elder said that it was because you, Chu Autumn-Sword, attacked someone within the territory of the Myriad Martial Merchants Guild, so it was only right for him to take action. Chu Autumn-Sword then turned to the young man beside him and asked, May I ask, brother, who initiated the attack just now? The young man in white clothes informed Enforcer Elder that Lu Floating was the one who struck first. Upon hearing this, Enforcer Elder asked menacingly, Are you sure what you said is true? Following closely, Disciple also explained, We just asked several junior brothers present here, and they all said the same thing. After Enforcer Elder learned the truth, his face darkened, and he slowly said, Lu Floating, as a disciple of the Spiritual Talisman Pavilion, committing crimes with full knowledge is even more serious. At this moment, Lu Floating finally realized that Chu Autumn-Sword had deliberately provoked him. So he immediately pointed at Chu Autumn-Sword and explained, It's a misunderstanding. Enforcer Elder, Chu Autumn-Sword, was the one who sold fake talismans first. I couldn't help but take action. Upon hearing this, Enforcer Elder's eyes instantly hardened as he stared intently at Chu Autumn-Sword for selling fake talismans. That is a capital offense. Chu Autumn-Sword smiled lightly at the words and said, If that's the case, Elder, do you dare to bet with me? Lu Floating's master, upon hearing this, smiled wickedly and asked, How would you like to bet? In fact, he also wanted to see what tricks Chu Autumn-Sword could play under his hands. Following that, Chu Autumn-Sword spoke slowly. If the effectiveness of my strength enhancement talisman can be doubled, Elder will compensate me with 300 pieces of body tempering Dan. Elder from the Spiritual Talisman Pavilion obviously doesn't believe that Chu Autumn-Sword has such means, so he immediately said that as long as he can do it, he is willing to offer 500 pieces. After all, in his eyes, Chu Autumn-Sword is already a dead person. So it doesn't matter how many promises he makes. The competition between Elder and the top talent of Skywater County began. Under Elder's leadership, Chu Autumn-Sword followed the group to the Spiritual Talisman Pavilion. Only Elder Chang pointed to a large cauldron in front of him and said, "This is the talisman tester of the spiritual talisman pavilion. Any spiritual talisman placed before it will have its effects and grade revealed completely." Chu Autumn-Sword was afraid that this old rascal was playing tricks, so he asked him, "Are you sure Elder Chang is convinced that the talisman tester will not make any mistakes?" With these words, Elder Chang was immediately filled with anger, feeling utterly reckless. "This concerns the reputation of the spiritual talisman pavilion. How dare you question it?" At the same time, Lu Floating was making sarcastic remarks on the side. "I see that you, Chu Autumn-Sword, may be feeling cowardly. Why don't you obediently apologize to me now? Perhaps I will spare your life intact." Chu Autumn-Sword ignored him and walked straight towards the talisman tester. He slowly took out a paper talisman from his pocket. When Chu Autumn-Sword's strength enhancement talisman is placed into the talisman tester, at that moment, a beam of golden light emerged from the top and transformed into several lines of text. Strength enhancement talisman grade first grade level top tier enhancement effect, doubling the strength enhancement. At this moment, Elder Chang's eyes were almost popping out. He didn't expect this guy to actually draw a spiritual talisman that can double the strength enhancement. At the same time, Enforcer Pavilion Elder also looked shocked. He looked at everything in front of him and couldn't believe it. "I didn't expect Skywater County to have produced another talented talisman master." When Lu Floating saw Chu Autumn-Sword's talisman, when it really can amplify strength by 2 times, jealousy and increased hatred caused him to change beyond recognition. At this moment, he disregarded the pain in his arm. He pushed away the guard beside him in one go. He drew out a dagger and menacingly rushed toward Chu Autumn-Sword. "I am the true genius of Skywater County. You are cheating! I will kill you!" Just as Lu Floating was about to rush in front of Chu Autumn-Sword, his master, Elder Chang, swiftly arrived in front of Chu Autumn-Sword, and with a flick of his hand, slapped him across the face. Lu Floating was slapped and sent flying by his own master. "Get out! You fool! You've embarrassed me! Someone come! Hurry up and carry your useless senior brother down." The old man seemed fierce when he slapped Lu Floating, but he did it to leave a way out for his beloved disciple. After all, publicly questioning the talisman tester is a slap in the face to the spiritual talisman pavilion. At this moment, Enforcer Elder's expression also changed. "Young friend Chu, hello." Chu Autumn-Sword asked immediately upon hearing this. "Elder Liang, is there something else?" It turns out that this old man wants Chu Autumn-Sword to join their spiritual talisman pavilion. In response, Chu Autumn-Sword questioned, "If you want me to join the spiritual talisman pavilion, you alone, Elder Liang, may not have the final say." But at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared at the door, only to see that person urgently shouting, "He cannot make the decision." "I can." When everyone saw this person, all disciples of the spiritual talisman pavilion bowed and saluted one after another, meeting the master of the pavilion. At the same time, Chu Autumn-Sword also recognized this person. This is indeed Master Yang Si-Shake of the spiritual talisman pavilion. It is said that Master Yang has always been elusive like a divine dragon. Unexpectedly, this matter has managed to attract his attention. After carefully examining Chu Autumn-Sword, Yang Si-Shake, he not only promised to provide Chu Autumn-Sword with unlimited cultivation resources, and immediately awarded him the badge of first-grade talisman master. It is important to know that the identity of a talisman master is an extremely prestigious presence in the entire celestial martial land. Everyone sees Chu Autumn-Sword so easily. Got the badge of first-grade talisman master. Elder Chang on the side couldn't help but sigh in secret. "My apprentice worked so hard and spent half of the Lu family's fortune to earn the title of first-grade talisman master for himself. I never expected this kid to obtain it so easily." Just then, Chu Autumn-Sword suddenly turned around with a smile on his face and looked at Elder Chang. "I wonder when you will give me the 500 body tempering pills?" Upon hearing this, the master of spiritual talisman pavilion immediately questioned Elder Chang. As a senior second-grade talisman master, you wouldn't resort to avoiding a debt with a young junior, would you? Elder Chang did not expect that Chu Autumn-Sword would mention this matter in front of the master of spiritual talisman pavilion, so he could only smile and agree to have the Dan pill delivered. But secretly, he cursed to himself. Chu Autumn-Sword, not only did you harm my disciple, but you also made me lose face to such an extent. I will remember this grudge. At the same time, master of the Liu family, Liu Willowtide, was ashamed and indignant upon learning of this matter. He saw his son, whom he had spent half of the family's wealth to cultivate, severely injured by a worthless person with just one punch, now completely devoid of any future prospects, sobbing and shouting in the arms of his elder sister. He is truly overwhelmed with shame. However, you did not mention that the Chu family's kid has already been disabled by you. Is there a flaw in your action? At this moment, Liu Heaven Jade explained that this matter is absolutely impossible. His Dan Tian has been completely shattered, and his entire cultivation level has been transferred to me. How could he still have any cultivation level? Master of the Liu family sighed deeply at the words, saying, "The fact that this kid didn't die is already a reality. Looking at it now, he's probably completely severed ties with our Liu family." Liu Heaven Jade on the side did not think much of it, saying, "Even if he didn't die, so what? Just a mere body refining for a layer cultivator. I don't even put him in my eyes." She then helped Liu floating up from the ground. The enrollment competition of the Mystic Sword sect is approaching. I must concentrate on advancing to the Qi condensation stage now. But you can rest assured that after I become a disciple of the Mystic Sword sect, I will definitely help you defeat that insignificant Chu Autumn-Sword. On the other side, Chu Autumn-Sword, who returned home, immediately sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate, only to see the spiritual qi around him continuously entering his body. Suddenly, a terrifying aura burst forth. He unexpectedly advanced to the body refining 6th layer. It turns out that Chu Autumn-Sword got the 500 body tempering pills from Elder Chang. After returning to his room, he consumed all the body tempering pills in one breath. With the help of the chaotic Heavenly Emperor Manual, in less than a day, Chu Autumn-Sword had completely absorbed all these Dan pills. This made Chu Autumn-Sword realize that he needed to quickly improve his cultivation level. He must go all out on the path of making money. Just at this moment, the abnormality outside the window alerted Chu Autumn-Sword. "Who is there?" Without waiting for Chu Autumn-Sword to speak again, a black shadow suddenly broke through the window and rushed towards Chu Autumn-Sword. The person who followed then raised his hand and unleashed a palm strike called Tides of Wit. Upon seeing this scene, Chu Autumn-Sword immediately stood up and mobilized the spiritual power throughout his body. He lightly raised his hand to point, easily breaking the full force attack of the man in black. The man was shocked by this. How is this possible? I am at the body refining 8th layer, yet I am being suppressed by a mere body refining 6th layer guy. While the man was still in shock, Chu Autumn-Sword had already flashed in front of him. He raised his hand and ruthlessly slammed it on the man's shoulder. The man, knowing he was no match, immediately turned into a black shadow and left. When Chu Autumn-Sword chased after him, the man in black had already disappeared. At this time, the maid painting light quickly asked Chu Autumn-Sword if she needed to send someone to pursue. Chu Autumn-Sword, on the contrary, showed a smile. "No need. I let him go on purpose." 5 days later, the Chu family will hold a large internal competition in the martial arts arena to determine the position of the new young master. Chu Autumn-Sword then slowly walked out. Some Chu family disciples couldn't help but curse secretly. He actually dared to be late for the clan's major competition. Does he still think he is the former top talent of Skywater County? This waste is probably scared. If that's the case, he might as well hand over the position of young master earlier. At this moment, 3 elders are sitting above the martial arts platform. Just then, a young man walked slowly to the front of the 3 elders and respectfully greeted them. Chu Frozen pays respects to the three elders. The disciples who saw this scene all praised in admiration. It's not for nothing that this person was cultivated by the Grand Elder. Politeness and humility are everyone's style. Meanwhile, as Grand Elder fully investigated Chu Frozen's strength through a look, Chu Frozen explained, "Grand Elder, rest assured. That guy does have some strength to challenge beyond his level, but ultimately he is only in the body refining stage. He will undoubtedly lose in this battle." Upon hearing this, the Grand Elder's suspended heart also relaxed. He immediately stood up and shouted, "I announce the intra-clan tournament to begin now. Please welcome Chu Frozen to the stage." Chu Frozen then stepped onto the martial arts platform in one stride. "Chu Autumn-Sword, I am truly honored to be able to be your opponent. After all, not long ago, I was far from being able to compare to you." Chu Autumn-Sword scoffed and said, "Are you talking too much nonsense? If you truly want to compete for the position of young master, then don't resort to using cheap tricks like those fools." Upon hearing this, Chu Frozen fell silent for a moment. Next, he mobilized his spiritual chi throughout his body and rushed towards Chu Autumn-Sword, delivering a full-force blow against Chu Frozen. Chu Autumn-Sword is not afraid at all. He gathers spiritual chi on top of his fist. When the two first faced off with fists, suddenly, two violent spiritual energies filled the entire martial arts arena. This scene shocked everyone. Am I not mistaken? They fought to a draw after just one clash. Didn't they say that Chu Autumn-Sword only has the cultivation level of body refining stage? How could he compete evenly with young Master Chu Frozen, who possesses pseudo-true force? At this moment, Chu Frozen also realized that something was wrong. How could this be happening? If Chu Autumn-Sword is at the same level as me, then won't I be hit by his punch as well? Thinking of this, Chu Frozen's chi and blood suddenly surged. He absolutely cannot let this Yogwai survive any longer. He immediately lifted his leg and struck downwards, heading straight to Chu Autumn-Sword's face. Thousand Legion Kick. This move from Chu Frozen is extremely powerful, and the downward strike instantly shatters the martial arts platform into pieces. When one move fails, Chu Frozen immediately unleashes the second move, Desolation Palm. At that moment, the two of them were fiercely fighting on the martial arts stage. And the Grand Elder on the side, seeing this, also broke out in a cold sweat. Where did Chu Autumn-Sword's strength come from? It's definitely not just body refining technique. If things continue like this, Chu Frozen will undoubtedly lose. So, he quietly signaled to Chu Frozen. Upon seeing Grand Elder's signal, Chu Frozen immediately understood. He immediately took out a Dan pill from his waist. The scene was immediately noticed by another elder next to the Grand Elder. It turned out to be a Dan pill that forcibly elevates one stage. He immediately stood up and shouted, "Quick, stop him! That's a Dan pill that can elevate one stage." However, the Grand Elder did not agree with this and said, "Going up on the stage is between the two of them. Little three, are you trying to break the rules?" Third Elder explained that the Dan pill is extremely destructive when taken, and it also poses great risks to the martial artists themselves. To forcibly destroy two junior disciples over a chair. Is it worth it? But the Grand Elder has already made up his mind. He told the Third Elder that if Chu Autumn-Sword is afraid, he can surrender. After all, he has been planning for many years for the position of the clan leader. If he can kill Chu Autumn-Sword by sacrificing a Chu Frozen, what's the harm in that? I saw a Chu Frozen taking out a Dan pill and putting it into his mouth. Suddenly, a terrifying vital chi surged out from Chu Frozen's body. Yes, Chu Frozen has broken through to the chi condensation stage. Chu Autumn-Sword noticed that Chu Frozen's spiritual power had skyrocketed. Earlier, the opponent was only at the pseudo-chi condensation stage, which Chu Autumn-Sword could handle. But now that he has stepped into the chi condensation stage, he's not that easy to deal with. At the same time, Chu Frozen unexpectedly flashed behind Chu Autumn-Sword and swung his sword towards Chu Autumn-Sword's vital points. Facing Chu Frozen, who is a whole stage above him, Chu Autumn-Sword was continually forced to retreat. The disciple from the family was shocked and dropped his jaw at the sight. Chu Autumn-Sword, who had just managed to steady himself, stared firmly at Chu Frozen in front of him. "That was close. I almost messed up big time," he thought. Chu Frozen, who had gained the upper hand, sneered. "Chu Autumn-Sword, if you kneel down and beg for mercy now, perhaps I might spare your life." At that moment, Chu Autumn-Sword sneered disdainfully. Then he raised his hand and made a move towards his chest. He took out a paper talisman and held it in his hand. Chu Frozen disapproves of Chu Autumn-Sword's actions. He raised his sword and continued to charge towards Chu Autumn-Sword, just as Chu Frozen was about to reach his side. After the paper talisman was activated, a terrifying energy suddenly surged forward. The next second, Chu Frozen was blasted backwards by this terrifying energy. When Chu Frozen reacted, his chest had already been pierced by that terrifying energy, and then he fell with a thud on the stage. This situation directly left Chu family disciple in a daze. It is rumored that Chu Autumn-Sword can produce a strength enhancement talisman that doubles one's power. I didn't expect it to be true. At the same time, the Grand Elder on the high platform was so angry that his beard was crooked. "You little beast. I didn't expect you to hide it so well." Chu Autumn-Sword saw that the Grand Elder was delaying announcing the results of the competition, so he asked when they would announce the results. The Grand Elder, feeling helpless, had no choice but to announce. In the future, the young master of the Chu family will still be served by Chu Autumn-Sword. The crowd who heard this, everyone bowed to the young master one after another. After the competition, Chu Autumn-Sword returned to his own room. At the same time, the maid painting-like had already prepared a meal for him. At this time, the imposing Dan Pavilion Elder walked in with a smile on his face. Chu Autumn-Sword coldly inquired upon seeing this. "Pavilion Elder, what brings you here? May I ask the purpose of your visit?" In the celestial martial land, martial prowess is highly revered. Those who can break through to the 9th layer of body refining within the specified age limit are eligible to participate in the Mystic Sword Sect's recruitment grand competition. And 20 days later will be the recruitment grand competition of the Mystic Sword Sect. In order to qualify for the competition, Chu Autumn-Sword must break through from body refining 6th layer to body refining 9 layer in less than a month. Fortunately, Elder from the Dan Pavilion found out that Chu Autumn-Sword regained the position of the family's young master. So, he shamelessly sent Chu Autumn-Sword several chi-gathering Dan. With these resources, Chu Autumn-Sword immediately plans to enter seclusion for cultivation. The maid on the side reminded Chu Autumn-Sword, saying, "After regaining the position of young master, the disciple of the Grand Elder's line may stir up trouble again. Why are you in such a hurry to seclude yourself?" Chu Autumn-Sword was unconvinced by this, as he had never regarded the Grand Elder highly from the beginning to the end. The most important thing was the enrollment competition of the Mystic Sword Sect in Skywater County. At the same time, inside the vestment hall of the Mystic Sword Sect, a disciple of the Mystic Sword Sect reported in the hall, "Elder, the recruitment site of our sect in Skywater County is almost ready." Upon hearing this, the Elder of Mystic Sword Sect casually remarked that remote places, like Skywater County, have always found it difficult to produce outstanding talents. The disciple spoke again, stating that as far as they knew, there have already been 3 young masters and misses who have broken through the chi condensation stage in this place. They are Lu Heaven Jade from the Lu family and Ouyang Abyss from the Ouyang family. When it comes to this point, the disciple hesitated to continue speaking. The 3rd martial artist who broke through to the chi condensation stage. This puzzled the Elder of the Mystic Sword Sect. There are 3 martial artists, but who is the 4th one? The disciple hesitantly replied, "Chu Autumn-Sword, the young master of the Chu family, was originally the top talent in Skywater County. However, he recently suffered a great calamity and is now only at the body refining 6th layer." Upon hearing this, the elder of Mystic Sword sect expressed some regret. The minimum requirement for enrollment in the martial sect is the body refining 9th layer. It's impossible to achieve a breakthrough within 20 days. It seems that he does not have the fate for it. In the blink of an eye, Chu Autumn-Sword broke through from the body refining 6th layer to the body refining 9th layer by taking the Qi gathering Dan. Once the martial artist reaches this stage, some of their meridians will be opened up. But Chu Autumn-Sword found that after reaching this stage, there was no movement at all in his 8 extraordinary meridians. The human body has a total of 20 meridians, which are divided into the 12 primary meridians and the 8 extraordinary meridians. Once a martial artist enters the body refining 9 layer, it indicates that their 12 primary meridians have been cleared. As for the 8 extraordinary meridians, only a very small number of martial artists with exceptional innate talents can barely clear 1 or 2 of them. Once all the 8 extraordinary meridians are cleared, reaching the body refining stage pinnacle allows one to cultivate the legendary supreme martial body. Therefore, clearing the 8 extraordinary meridians must be completed during the body refining stage. Thinking of this, Chu Autumn-Sword suddenly felt that time was running out for him, and he wants to acquire more resources. The top priority now is to focus on making money. So, the next morning, Chu Autumn-Sword hurriedly arrived at the Spiritual Talisman Pavilion. The master of Spiritual Talisman Pavilion couldn't help but admire the spiritual talismans brought by Chu Autumn-Sword. Apart from the Strength Enhancement Talisman, all the other talismans have doubled efficiency, truly deserving of being our Skywater County's talisman genius. But then he saw Chu Autumn-Sword looking listless. The master of Spiritual Talisman Pavilion couldn't help but ask, "Young friend Chu, you don't look too well. Is something bothering you?" Chu Autumn-Sword explained, "Thank you for your concern, master of Pavilion. I just didn't sleep well last night. After all, I spent the whole night inside the Tower of the Chaos Sovereign, only to fully comprehend the path of talisman and formation. These things naturally cannot be known by others." At this moment, the master of Spiritual Talisman Pavilion suddenly placed his hand on Chu Autumn-Sword's shoulder. "There are 2 distinguished guests here today. I can introduce you to them." Immediately, an old man and a young girl. They then slowly walked in. They are Elder Zhou Ring of the Myriad Martial Merchants Guild, and Xia Silent Bamboo, the daughter of the Myriad Martial Merchants Guild. Heard the introduction of the master of Spiritual Talisman Pavilion. Chu Autumn-Sword quickly bowed and saluted, saying, "I am Chu Autumn-Sword." Meanwhile, he was thinking to himself that the Spiritual Talisman Pavilion was just a small branch under the Myriad Martial Merchants Guild. I can't believe that the young lady from the trading firm would condescend to come here. Xia Silent Bamboo didn't pay any attention to the salute from Chu Autumn-Sword, walking straight past him. She then picked up the talisman drawn by Chu Autumn-Sword. She carefully examined it. She is very satisfied with these talismans, Xia Silent Bamboo. So she turned back and told Chu Autumn-Sword, "The talismans you drew. We all want them at Myriad Martial Merchants Guild." Upon hearing this, Chu Autumn-Sword was instantly confused. "What did you say? You want them all?" At this moment, Master of Spiritual Talisman Pavilion reminded him on the side, "Silly boy. The lady means she wants to collaborate with you. This is our Great Qin dynasty's prominent wealth in the top position." Upon hearing these words, Chu Autumn-Sword's heart bloomed with joy at this. In this way, I will no longer have to worry about not having money to buy cultivate resources. I can finally focus on opening up the 8 extraordinary meridians with peace of mind. Immediately after, Xia Silent Bamboo took out a gold card from his pocket. She casually tossed it into Chu Autumn-Sword's hands. "This is our Myriad Martial Merchants Guild's VIP card. Inside, there are 10,000 first-grade spiritual stones. In the future, for every spiritual talisman you sell to us, we will put the spiritual stones inside." At the same time, the elder of the Myriad Martial Merchants Guild who came together was shocked. This kind of card is hard to obtain even for the princes of the Great Qin dynasty. Miss actually just gave it to a country boy like that. The boy was carrying a large hemp sack. He entered the largest trading guild in the empire. He pointed directly at someone. He requested the grand elder of the guild to come and see him. Such arrogant behavior. Not only does it make a laughingstock of oneself, even some people go so far as to mock and say, "You are a useless person. Look at your own status. Since you are barely surviving, don't show off everywhere to attract this Mrs. Attention." And the woman is unaware that Chu Autumn-Sword was already treated as a valuable guest by the young lady of the merchant house 10 days ago. And the guild also ordered 2,000 top-tier talismans from Chu Autumn-Sword. So, Chu Autumn-Sword's visit this time is not just empty talk, but to deliver talismans to the myriad martial merchants guild. After all, after the master of spiritual talisman pavilion and miss of the myriad martial merchants guild carefully inspected Chu Autumn-Sword's spiritual talisman, they found that his spiritual talisman drawing technique was a bit sloppy. But after a careful examination, the master of spiritual talisman pavilion suddenly discovered the clue within. This was obviously noticed long ago by the young lady from the myriad martial merchants guild. Such discovery prompted the master of spiritual talisman pavilion to burst into laughter. "You little rascal. This talisman may appear sloppy, but it is actually intentionally concealing its sharpness. This is obviously to suppress the grade of the talisman." Xia's silent bamboo on the side also said, "It seems like Miss came to Skywater County this time. I really didn't make this trip in vain." At the same time, Chu Autumn-Sword, who returned home, immediately entered the tower of the Chaos Sovereign. Not just limited to first-grade talisman. After all, even if the first-grade talisman is well crafted, its value is limited. If he wants to excel in talisman crafting, he must learn to refine higher-grade talismans. 10 days have passed in the blink of an eye. Chu Autumn-Sword is now carrying a large hemp bag on his back. He entered the myriad martial merchants guild. He heard that Chu Autumn-Sword wanted to see Master Su. Lu Heaven Jade immediately chuckled. "Who do you think you are? Master Su is not someone you, a useless person, can meet just because you want to." This voice is too familiar, Chu Autumn-Sword. He turned around and said, "Young Miss Lu, you can rest assured. As someone with a heart as venomous as a snake and as changeable as water, and as fickle as a poplar flower, only someone like Ouyang Abyss could be rare enough for you." Chu's words infuriated Lu Heaven Jade to half-death. She then pointed at the bridge of Chu Autumn-Sword's nose. She scolded, "You useless guy, how dare you insult me like this? You better watch your mouth. The Ouyang family is a distinguished guest of the myriad martial merchants guild. I'll have someone kick you out right now." However, just at this moment, Elder Su of the myriad martial merchants guild, Su Franz. She walked out with Xia's silent bamboo. "Young Master Chu, you made us wait for a long time." Upon hearing this, Lu Heaven Jade and his group were suddenly amazed. Immediately, Chu Autumn-Sword took a step forward. "Elder Su. Miss Xia, please forgive me for being delayed due to some matters." Several people have seen Chu Autumn-Sword truly well acquainted with the largest imperial firm. Lu Heaven Jade suddenly realized how ridiculous his previous words were. He didn't understand why the people of the myriad martial merchants guild would treat him in such a way, just a waste of space. That's how Chu Autumn-Sword was invited into the VIP area by 2 beautiful women. As he left, Chu Autumn-Sword looked back mockingly at Lu Heaven Jade and said, "You still owe me that debt. Sooner or later, I will collect every penny of it." Chu Autumn-Sword's words. Lu Heaven Jade is so angry that he is gnashing his teeth. At the same time, enter the Chu Autumn-Sword of the myriad martial merchants guild's elegant room. He emptied out all the spiritual talismans from the hemp sack. Even Elder Su, who has seen the world. She was greatly shocked to see so many talismans for the first time. However, this is not the end yet. Chu Autumn-Sword then took out 3 talismans from his pocket. He asked Elder Su about the price. After Elder Su took the talisman, he looked shocked because Chu Autumn-Sword handed him a second-grade spiritual talisman. So she didn't hesitate to call Xia Silent Bamboo over. Once Xia Silent Bamboo knew the situation, immediately, she used the family's secret technique, because she wanted to take a look the grades of these 3 second-grade spiritual talismans. After a moment, the types and grades of the 3 spiritual talismans are all revealed, and all are middle-tier grade. The amplification effect is unprecedented for them. This makes Xia Silent Bamboo have to re-examine Chu Autumn-Sword. He can refine second-grade spiritual talismans in the body refining stage. As long as he grows successfully in the future, he will surely be able to become a master in the talisman path. So Elder Su and Xia Silent Bamboo couldn't help but glance at each other. Elder Su immediately expressed that the Myriad Martial Merchants Guild is willing to invest 150,000 spiritual stones to purchase 500,000 talismans drawn by Chu Autumn-Sword, including 2,000 first-grade spiritual talismans and second-grade spiritual talismans. That is equivalent to the Chu family's entire income for 3 years. This made Chu Autumn-Sword once again realize the money-making potential of the talisman master profession. With this money, Chu Autumn-Sword wanted to buy some martial technique cultivation. After all, in the celestial martial land, martial prowess is highly regarded. So he asked Elder Su where he could purchase weapons. He learned from Elder Su's mouth. Tomorrow, they will be at Myriad Martial Merchants Guild. There happens to be a large-scale auction. So Chu Autumn-Sword plans to come back here tomorrow. The 2 women watched Chu Autumn-Sword's departing figure. Xia Silent Bamboo was momentarily distracted. Elder Su seized the opportunity to tease her, saying, "I wonder if the young lady has heard of the Waiting Wife Rock. I have already sent someone to inquire about young Master Chu. It is indeed commendable that he is willing to devote 3 full years of life-bound essence blood for his beloved." "Go away, annoying. Please tell Miss Xia this sentence." She blushed suddenly. This is just a mystic-grade martial technique. As a result, it caused the 4 major families of Skywater County to sell their properties. They all came to fight for it, just because it is in the remote and impoverished land of Skywater County. A mystic-grade martial technique. This is enough to allow a family to rise to the top 4 major families. So the 4 major families spared no effort to bid for this martial technique at all costs. But at this moment, a young man appeared. He actually got the Myriad Martial Merchants Guild to open up, receiving guests even in the usually closed-off private room number 1. And the Chamber of Commerce even arranged for Elder Su, who is known as Fairy Fox, to accompany them personally. He faced Su France, who exuded a lovely fragrance. Chu Autumn-Sword tried to move his body as far away as possible. Su France then immediately stretched out his foot and rubbed it against Chu Autumn-Sword's leg. To prevent himself from lacking in willpower, Chu Autumn-Sword urged Su France to quickly start the auction. Su France did not tease him any further upon hearing this. She ordered the maid beside her to start the auction. Then a woman slowly walked up to the counter. The first item up for auction is a spiritual sword with ice attributes, named Crystal Frost, made of 1,000-year-old frozen iron. Young Master Lu from the Lu family bids 20,000 spiritual stones first. Lu Heaven Jade thought that no one would dare to compete with the Lu family for their position in Celestial Water City. But at this moment, room number 1 unexpectedly bid 30,000 spiritual stones. Suddenly, Lu Heaven Jade was so angry that she spat out the tea she had just drunk. At this point, they also noticed that the bidder came from room 1, even though she knew the other party was someone she couldn't afford to provoke, but for the enrollment competition of the Mystic Sword sect. Lu Heaven Jade could only grit her teeth and continue bidding. After bidding several times in a row, the Crystal Frost Sword has been raised to 50,000 spiritual stones. This is clearly higher than its actual value, so Chu Autumn-Sword did not bid again. Su France on the side also saw Chu Autumn-Sword's intention. He obviously wanted to teach a lesson to that ungrateful woman. A moment later, the second item up for auction was brought out. It was a tattered and worn great sword. Upon seeing it, the crowd all started to criticize. How can this piece of junk be considered an auction item? When did the myriad martial merchants guild have such poor taste? What they don't know is that even the top appraisal experts of the myriad martial merchants guild would not be able to determine its grade. Chu Autumn-Sword, who was far away on the high platform, also noticed this sword. At the same time, the tower of the Chaos Sovereign in his body also began to stir. Things that can trigger a response from the tower of the Chaos Sovereign. Obviously, it won't be ordinary. So Chu Autumn-Sword immediately wanted to buy this sword, but Su Franz told him that if the young master liked it, she could directly represent the myriad martial merchants guild and give it to him. He instantly understood and accepted this easy offer. Su Franz also took the opportunity to approach him. She pressed her body tightly against Chu Autumn-Sword. Young master, don't be in a hurry. The real highlight is the items to be auctioned next. As soon as Su Franz finished speaking, a group of people brought up a box bound from head to toe with iron chains. The box appeared very heavy, with a shiny golden lock on it. Open the box. Inside is a bundle of scrolls. According to the auctioneer's introduction, this is a mystic grade, low-tier martial technique called Sevenfold Furious Wave Palm. As soon as this was said, the whole auction exploded. After all, mystic grade martial techniques are usually only possessed by prominent clans and families. Even the young masters of prestigious families do not have the qualifications to cultivate. It can be seen that this auction organized by the Myriad Martial Merchants Guild is a huge investment. Because it is a mystic grade martial technique, the starting price has soared to a whopping 50,000 spiritual stones. This left the vast majority of people present speechless. 50,000 spiritual stones. Ordinary families do not have such financial resources. This is clearly prepared for the 4 major noble families. At the same time, on the second floor, the master of Mo family bid 60,000 spiritual stones first. At this moment, the young master of the Liu family interjected and sarcastically said, "Uncle Mo, with just this little money, you shouldn't embarrass yourself by bringing it out." This made the master of the Mo family burst out cursing. "Blue floating, aren't you being too arrogant?" Upon hearing these words, Liu Floating immediately bid 100,000 spiritual stones. Room number 1 suddenly bid 140,000. For the vast majority of residents in Skyward County, 140,000 is simply an astronomical price. Liu Heaven Jade seemed to be deliberately competing with herself, and a surge of anger rose in her heart. But 14 million is already 3 years' income for their Liu family. If they continue bidding, and the other party bid without hesitation, showing their financial strength is as deep as the sea. So Liu Heaven Jade didn't have the courage to continue bidding. She turned around and prepared to leave. Chu Autumn-Sword looked at the 2 items in front of her. He knew very little about the Sevenfold Furious Wave Palm, so he wanted Su Franz to introduce it to him. Upon hearing this, she leaned in close to Chu Autumn-Sword's ear. The power of the first 3 palms of the Sevenfold Furious Wave Palm can only be considered ordinary in the Mystic Grade low tier, but starting from the 4th palm, each palm will stack the palm force of the previous palms. That is to combine the 7 layers of force into one, which is as powerful as a Mystic Grade middle tier martial technique. However, this martial technique places an extreme burden on the body, even for a martial artist at the chi condensation stage. Young master must be very careful. Su Franz pressed his body tightly against his own road shoulder. Chu Autumn-Sword quickly pushed her away. "I still have things to attend to, I'll leave first." Then he turned around and left. The young man simply raised his hand and pointed lightly forward, causing a huge hole to be blasted out of the mountainside. It turns out that he cultivated a mystic grade martial technique called Sevenfold Furious Wave Palm. The palm's strength slowly accumulates, eventually unleashing a mighty force like an avalanche. Having such a martial technique, like the Chu Autumn-Sword, has filled him with confidence for the recruitment assessment of the Mystic Sword sect tomorrow. But for now, he has to focus on what he needs to do. Of course, he will naturally do his best to open up his own 8 extraordinary meridians. After all, the enrollment competition of the Mystic Sword sect not only tests a person's martial strength. More importantly, it depends on the bloodline grade of the disciple and the number of the 8 extraordinary meridians that have been opened. Chu Autumn-Sword just finished cultivating and hurriedly rushed back to the clan. Painting-like, who hadn't seen her young master all night, immediately threw herself into his arms. "Master, you were absent all night. I was so worried about you." Chu Autumn-Sword quickly asked Painting-like if he had prepared what he needed last night. Painting-like handed a burlap sack to Chu Autumn-Sword and said, "Here are a total of 300 chi-gathering pills, all of first-grade quality." After receiving the chi-gathering pills, Chu Autumn-Sword immediately prepared to seclude himself for cultivation. At the same time, he suddenly remembered the broken sword he had acquired at the auction. The sword was vaguely engraved with 2 large characters, "Long Abyss." After examining it carefully, he did not find anything special about it. But this sword can resonate multiple times with the Tower of the Chaos Sovereign. It must be extraordinary. Just then, the Long Abyss sword suddenly emitted a golden light. The next second, it unexpectedly turned into a wisp of breeze and entered its own body. Therefore, Chu Autumn-Sword immediately entered the Tower of the Chaos Sovereign and found that the Long Abyss sword was suspended in the center of the origin of 10,000 Taoist talisman and formation. Chu Autumn-Sword intended to retrieve it with his hand. But the surface temperature of the Long Abyss sword almost burned him, because the origin of 10,000 Taoist talisman and formation was too overbearing, causing Chu Autumn-Sword to be unable to refine it for a long time. He looked at the precious sword he had worked so hard to obtain being taken away by the Tower of the Chaos Sovereign, leaving Chu Autumn-Sword speechless and frustrated. But just then, a golden great formation suddenly emerged under his feet. Immediately, countless strands of vital chi transformed into golden threads surging into his body. Chu Autumn-Sword only realized this at that moment. It turned out to be the great formation under his feet. Forcing oneself to instill vital chi. In just a moment, while practicing the Chu Autumn-Sword technique, one may feel an excess of vital chi in the body. If not absorbed in time, it may lead to going astray into magic. This can be used to open up the 8 extraordinary meridians. Looking at the broken sword Chu Autumn-Sword that was taken in by the Tower of the Chaos Sovereign, I suddenly thought about whether my chi-gathering Dan could also bring it into the tower. So he activated his telekinetic power, and the next second, those 300 chi-gathering Dan were really taken in by him. This made Chu Autumn-Sword extremely excited. Because in the future, the Tower of the Chaos Sovereign can be used as a space. But for now, he still needs to seize the time to cultivate. Chu Autumn-Sword takes a breath and puts countless Dan pills into his mouth. With the assistance of the Tower of the Chaos Sovereign, just half an hour has passed. Chu Autumn-Sword directly opened up his own 8 extraordinary meridians. Moreover, as soon as he opened them up, he activated all 7 of them at once. Only the last life-death profound meridian is left unopened. However, this is already his limit now. After all, the life-death profound meridian has always been called the life and death iron wall pass by martial artists. There are very few martial artists in the entire celestial martial land who can open it. And this series of consumption made Chu Autumn-Sword feel completely powerless. Now only one meridian is left unopened, so Chu Autumn-Sword is determined to open this meridian himself. And he also wants to find a way to obtain the Long Abyss sword. Also, I want to win the enrollment competition of the Mystic Sword sect. The next day, the enrollment competition of the Mystic Sword sect began. At this moment, the area around the talent testing platform in the southwest region was already crowded with people. The Mystic Sword sect historically only accepts disciples once every 10 years. And each time they enroll, they only select 20 martial artists with outstanding talent and strength. Just as everyone was discussing who could enter the Mystic Sword sect, Ouyang Abyss slowly walked over with Lu Heaven Jade. The young master of the Ouyang family in Skywater County, at the age of only 17, is already a strong Qi condensation stage 6 layer cultivator. In this enrollment competition, he is likely to be the top winner. Meanwhile, the elder from the Mystic Sword sect has also arrived. Everyone who meets the requirements of our sect, please come up on stage and prepare to begin the talent test. Lu Heaven Jade and Ouyang Abyss heard these words. They immediately walked towards the talent testing platform together. However, just at this moment, a familiar figure caught Lu Heaven Jade's attention. Chu Autumn-Sword is also here. He ignored the looks of others and walked confidently towards the testing platform. Ouyang Abyss saw the situation and immediately sneered. Even a weakling dares to appear in front of me? It seems like the lesson I gave you is not enough. At this moment, Lu Heaven Jade also chimed in and said, he doesn't know what sorcery he used. He actually restored his Dantian and resumed cultivating. But Ouyang Abyss didn't care about Chu Autumn-Sword at all. He was just a struggling waste in his eyes. He was no longer the #1 talent in Skywater County. At the same time, Lu Floating suddenly stood in front of Chu Autumn-Sword. You useless trash. Stop right there for me. A waste of a body refining 6 layer like you is not qualified to participate in the test. Upon hearing this, the Mystic Sword sect elder immediately rebuked. Irrelevant individuals without qualifications, step back at once. But in the next second, Chu Autumn-Sword channeled his incredibly pure spiritual chi within himself. Released, only hearing a loud rumble. Lu Floating in front of him was directly shaken and flew out. Other than having some talent in talisman crafting, Lu Floating's martial artist stage is very low. So, Chu Autumn-Sword just used vital chi to directly stun him. The elder of the Mystic Sword sect was greatly shocked to see that this child had indeed broken through to the body refining 9 layer in just 20 days. At the same time, Chu Autumn-Sword took a step forward, bowed respectfully, and asked Elder Luo, do I have the qualifications now? Hearing this, Elder Luo felt a bit ashamed. He nodded and gestured for Chu Autumn-Sword to come forward for testing. The competition between the two geniuses of Skywater County and a waste immediately began. This aptitude testing stone can test your cultivation level stage and bloodline grade. You just need to place your hand on top of it. Upon hearing this, Lu Heaven Jade was the first to step forward and placed her hand on the aptitude testing stone. Lu Heaven Jade, 16 years old, at the Qi condensation stage, 1 layer, possesses a mystic grade, middle tier aptitude with the 8 extraordinary meridians bloodline, rated at 0. Seeing such aptitude, the martial artists present were stirred up. Truly deserving of being my goddess, all of her aptitudes are mystic grade, middle tier. On the side, Elder Luo also cast a glance of approval upon seeing this. This made Lu Heaven Jade look back at Chu Autumn-Sword behind with extreme pride. Even if you have restored to the body refining 9 layer, how can you compare to me? There is still a world of difference between you and me. However, Chu Autumn-Sword completely ignored him. Next, Ouyang Abyss also began the talent test. Ouyang Abyss, 17 years old, at the Qi condensation stage 6th layer, has Earth grade middle tier aptitude and Earth grade top tier bloodline, with 3 of the 8 extraordinary meridians. This kind of talent has even surprised Elder Luo. This child is truly blessed with an Earth grade bloodline. Even in our Mystic Sword sect, there are not many like him. Countless martial artists roared and punched at once. This is our Skywater County's top talent. Just at this moment, Chu Autumn-Sword placed his hand on the child aptitude testing stone. A sudden burst of golden energy surged into the night sky. Countless people were blinded by the golden light. What's going on? At the same time, the test results of Chu Autumn-Sword are being revealed. Chu Autumn-Sword, 17 years old, body refining 9 layer aptitude, heavenly grade middle tier bloodline, heavenly grade low tier the 8 extraordinary meridian 7 channels. Seeing this scene, Lu Heaven Jade and Ouyang Abyss both opened their mouths, so wide that they could fit a duck egg in. watching the aptitude testing stone almost get shattered. Elder Luo on the side could hardly believe his eyes. This kid actually has opened up 7 out of the 8 extraordinary meridians. If he opens up one more, won't he reach the legendary body refining stage pinnacle? The former top talent of Skywater County seems to have returned at this moment. However, what they did not know was that these outcomes were actually fake. Chu Autumn-Sword's bloodline talent has long surpassed the heavenly grade. This is the altered outcome after he used the Tower of the Chaos Sovereign. After all, once a martial artist with a bloodline exceeding the heavenly grade appears, I'm afraid the entire Great Qin dynasty will be alarmed. Whether it will bring blessings or disasters remains unknown. At the same time, Chu Autumn-Sword has turned his attention to Lu Heaven Jade. Lu Heaven Jade, when you and Ouyang Abyss plotted against me, considering me worthless. Have you ever thought about today? When this statement came out, it immediately caused a stir on the scene. It turned out that the young master of the Chu family was actually harmed by Ouyang Abyss and Lu Heaven Jade. Seeing countless martial artists pointing their fingers at Lu Heaven Jade, he repeatedly denied the matter. At the same time, Chu Autumn-Sword stepped forward behind her, saying, "In order to heal your triple-ene severed meridian, I have provided you with a drop of life-bound essence blood every month without interruption for the past 3 years. In the end, you conspired with Ouyang Abyss to steal my bloodline cultivation level, breaking my meridians and shattering my dantian. How could there be such a woman with a heart as venomous as a snake and scorpion in this world?" Chu Autumn-Sword speaking the truth left Lu Heaven Jade momentarily unsure how to refute. She went limp and knelt down on the ground. Ouyang Abyss on the side immediately explained, "Chu Autumn-Sword, you are too despicable. Heaven Jade simply did not agree to be with you, and you defame her like this. Is this the conduct of a true gentleman?" Chu Autumn-Sword, who heard this, laughed. "Is it a noble act to use the blood transference devil technique to take away my bloodline, second young master?" When this was said, suddenly made the scene boil again. After all, the blood transference devil technique is a forbidden technique. Once discovered, any martial artist who cultivates it will be killed. It seems that the fact that the Ouyang family has joined the demon sect is about to be exposed. Ouyang Silver immediately stepped onto the testing platform. "Chu Autumn-Sword, you little beast, don't think that your extraordinary talent allows you to talk nonsense here." He then summoned the spiritual chi around his body, gathering it in the palm of his hand. "How dare you talk nonsense here? Today, I will strike you down with one palm slap." Facing Ouyang Silver's full force strike, Chu Autumn-Sword unavoidable, he forcibly took it with his body. Immediately, his figure burst out like a sharp sword. Ouyang Silver's cultivation level is the ocean conversion stage above the chi condensation stage. The palm strike of Chu Autumn-Sword clearly couldn't handle it. However, this also shocked Ouyang Silver greatly. This kid only has the body refining 9-layer, yet my full-force palm strike couldn't directly kill him. Just then, a hand suddenly landed on Chu Autumn-Sword's shoulder. "I didn't expect that, kid, you actually have such a hidden story." The person who came as master of spiritual talisman pavilion xianxia. After he helped Chu Autumn-Sword up from the ground, he flashed to Ouyang Abyss's side and said, "You're quite bold to cultivate the blood transference devil technique, a taboo art." Ouyang Abyss repeatedly denied it upon hearing this. xianxia calmly responded, "Whether you have cultivated it or not, I will know once I give it a try." At this moment, Ouyang Silver stepped forward and stood in front of Ouyang Abyss. "Master Yang, are you implying that you want to have a showdown with our Ouyang family?" xianxia sneered at the scene. "You want to kill the people of my spiritual talisman pavilion right in front of me, and then talk about having a showdown? How ridiculous. Do you have the ability? I can stand still, but that kid behind you, if he has truly cultivated the devil technique, then he can't escape the death penalty." Ouyang Silver knew that this matter couldn't be hidden. He immediately prepared to use the Bloodbane Sect's devil technique to save Ouyang Abyss. Suddenly, the sky was completely covered in a blood-red color. Numerous people's faces changed drastically in an instant. Not good. This is the Bloodbane sect, infamous for their merciless killings. Everyone run. The crowd scattered in all directions to escape. However, Ouyang Silver smirked at the sky and said coldly, "Senior brotherly." Then a dark figure slowly revealed itself. A group of useless sect members. Years of planning, all ruined by you. At this moment, the elder of Mystic Sword sect broke out in a cold sweat. The Ouyang family is actually from the Bloodbane sect. The Bloodbane sect is our mortal enemy in the Mystic Sword sect. Ouyang Abyss attending the enrollment assessment is clearly a plot by the Bloodbane sect. If Chu Autumn-Sword hadn't exposed this in time, I would have become a criminal for eternity. Just as countless people were holding their breath, afraid to even take a breath. The master of the spiritual talisman pavilion calmly stepped forward and shouted towards the sky. "Old Manly, long time no see. I didn't expect you to still be so arrogant." Seeing Xianxia shake here, Old Manly directly used the lives of all the people in the city to threaten him. "Common Man Yang, I know I am not your opponent, but if you dare to kill Ouyang Abyss, I will drag all the people in the city to accompany him in death." Xianxia Shake knows that Ouyang Abyss has extraordinary talent. Once he grows up, he will definitely become a major figure in the evil path. But with Old Man Li's character, if he really starts to take action, he will find it difficult to protect everyone. There is no way out. He can only compromise on this matter. Ouyang Silver saw the situation and quickly pulled Ouyang Abyss to prepare to leave Skywater County. However, just at this moment, Lu Heaven Jade suddenly reached out and grabbed him. "Brother Abyss, take me with you. Otherwise, Chu Autumn-Sword won't let me off." At this moment, Ouyang Abyss was struggling to save himself. How could he still care about this despicable person? He immediately prepared to strike her to death with one palm. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly entered his ears, implicating him as well. This woman harbors the triple severed meridian, but she has a malicious heart and is a bad seed of the evil path. Upon hearing this, Ouyang Abyss quickly transformed the spiritual chi in his palm. "Heaven Jade, don't cry. I will never leave you." Watching Ouyang Abyss Xianxia Shake being taken away by the Bloodbane sect, they could only grit their teeth and endure it. After the Bloodbane sect left, the elder of the Mystic Sword sect came out in high spirits. "Thank you, seniors, for coming to help. If it weren't for the seniors, I'm afraid none of us would have been able to leave here alive." Xianxia Shake burst into laughter upon hearing this. "Go back and tell Old Man Chiu that he owes me a huge favor today." After speaking, he swiftly left the place. The elder of the Mystic Sword sect didn't know what to do. After all, the only person in the Mystic Sword sect with the surname Chiu is their sect leader. If he brings back this message, he might end up being sidelined in the future. At this moment, a voice came from afar. "Common Man Yang, you sure can run fast." Just as the voice fell, a purple gas appeared in front of Chu Autumn-Sword in them. In an instant, a stunning woman in a purple robe appeared. The person who came was Cui Gracecloud, the peak master of the fourth peak of the Mystic Sword sect. When it was known that Chu Autumn-Sword's bloodline level was heavenly grade, she immediately demanded him to join her sect. Chu Autumn-Sword, who had originally planned to slip away in the confusion, heard these words. He was suddenly confused. He quickly explained, "Sect leader Cui, this seems to be against the rules. The disciples recruited still need to return to the sect for assessment before deciding their path." But this lady told him, "I can choose whoever I want. Do you dare to defy me?" Chu Autumn-Sword saw the situation and feared that if he didn't agree, he would suffer in the sect in the future. So he had to hurriedly kowtow and pay his respects. Master Cui Gracecloud, upon seeing this, threw him a token and said that by holding this token and going to the sect later, he could directly go to the fourth peak for reporting. He no longer needs to undergo the same tests as other disciples. Painting Like learned that Chu Autumn-Sword will soon be heading to Mystic Sword sect. She then knelt on the ground and begged him to take her along when he goes. Chu Autumn-Sword quickly helped her up when he saw this. He told her that a big sect like Mystic Sword sect would definitely have a lot of hidden internal conflicts. I'm afraid that bringing you along without careful consideration will only harm you. He then pulled her into his arms. After I establish myself in the Mystic Sword sect, I will definitely come back to get you. However, before that, you need to help me with something. He finished speaking and condensed a drop of life-bound essence blood from his fingertips. Then, he gently placed it into Painting Like's forehead. With this drop of life-bound essence blood, Painting Like's body underwent a earth-shattering transformation because Chu Autumn-Sword's life-bound essence blood was too overbearing. Without any cultivation level, Painting Like fainted directly after being subjected to that force. However, after this transformation, Painting Like successfully raised its bloodline level to Earth-grade middle tier. The next morning, Chu Autumn-Sword set foot on the cloud boat and headed to the Mystic Sword sect. At this moment, a girl suddenly pulled him from behind. The girl's name is Fu Noble Snow, and just like Chu Autumn-Sword, she is also from Skywater County. Because this is her first time traveling far from home, she thought that Chu Autumn-Sword and herself are compatriots. She hopes that in the future, the two of them can look after each other in the sect. Chu Autumn-Sword turned around and saw that the woman in front of him had already reached the chi condensation stage in cultivation level, so he quickly expressed that mutual care was indeed necessary. But what left him speechless was that the other party's cultivation level was clearly higher than his own. But she is so timid and fearful. She may be bullied by others in the future. In their conversation, they had already arrived at the Mystic Sword sect. As soon as they got off the cloud boat, they heard various clubs recruiting new members. Chu Autumn-Sword was a bit puzzled by this. He never imagined that a large sect like Mystic Sword sect would also be secretly forming small groups. At this moment, Fu Noble Snow explained on the side. These clubs are all formed by low-risk outer stage disciples, and are not worth joining. Even if they are outer disciples, they only recruit the strong. People like us from small places are generally ignored. But when Fu Noble Snow speaks, a Mystic Sword sect disciple suddenly covered her hand and said, "Junior sister, are you interested in joining our mysterious cloud society? Once Junior Sister Shizi joins our society, I will definitely have a good discussion with you." Fu Noble Snow kept retreating upon hearing this, indicating that she was reluctant to marry such a clueless person like Chu Autumn-Sword. He slapped the person's hand away with a loud smack. He immediately stepped in front of Fu Noble Snow. She didn't want to go. "Are you trying to force her?" The man released his vital chi and cursed. "You insignificant chi refining stage waste. When is it your turn to interrupt me? Get out of here!" It turns out this fellow is named Han Silent. He bullies his fellow disciples brazenly because his uncle is an outer elder of the Mystic Sword sect. A few days ago, he had already bullied a female disciple of the Purple Mist Society to death. Soon, Chu Autumn-Sword was surrounded by people. At the same time, a voice suddenly entered the ears of the crowd. The person speaking is Chu Autumn-Bamboo, a disciple of the Mystic Sword sect's fourth peak, Chu Autumn-Sword. She just appeared. She immediately captivated a group of disciples, causing them to be overjoyed. She just took a few casual steps on the square of the Mystic Sword sect. This directly caused numerous old men to have their chi and blood surge, and their noses bleed profusely. Who exactly has such an honor to let my goddess come out in person to find him? Just at this moment, Chu Autumn-Sword slowly spoke. "I am Chu Autumn-Sword." This made Han Silent incredulous. Why would a waste like him at the body refining stage be worthy of Senior Sister Zwichio's visit? At the same time, Zwichio Autumn-Bamboo flashed over to Chu Autumn-Sword's side. "He looks pretty good. No wonder my master took notice of him." Then she directly grabbed Chu Autumn-Sword's arm and said, "Now come with me to the fourth peak. I will personally arrange your accommodation today." At this moment, Chu Autumn-Sword suddenly asked Zwichio Autumn-Bamboo to wait for a moment. Then he said to Han Silent, "Fu Noble Snow, Junior Sister is unwilling to join the mysterious Cloud Society. Please do not force her." Chu Autumn-Bamboo, upon hearing this, immediately released his vital chi. Can you explain to me what is going on here? The other party was so frightened that they knelt down on the ground. Chu Autumn-Sword glanced at Chu Autumn-Bamboo beside him, and judging from the commotion just now, senior sister seems to have already reached the ocean conversion stage. Chu Autumn-Bamboo told him upon hearing this. Only strong individuals who have reached the ocean conversion stage. Only then can he be accepted as a direct disciple by the fourth peak. Being at the body refining stage, like you, and becoming a direct disciple is the first time in 1,000 years. The two of them talked along the way, and had already arrived at the fourth peak. The two pushed open the door, and took a look. Chu Autumn-Sword found that the room arranged for him was decorated in the style of a daughter's home. He thought to himself, could it be that this senior sister got the wrong place? At this moment, Chu Autumn-Bamboo explained again. Including the master, there are only 4 people at the fourth peak, and besides you, everyone else is female. As soon as these words were spoken, Chu Autumn-Sword immediately felt like he had fallen into spider-web cave. So he quickly asked where his master was. After all, according to the rules, Chu Autumn-Sword needed to first pay his respects to his master before truly entering the sect. However, Chu Autumn-Bamboo told him that the master was currently busy competing for disciples with a group of old men. At the same time, inside the council chamber of the Mystic Sword sect, the sect leader of the Mystic Sword sect was smiling from ear to ear. Great! Mystic Sword sect finally has a disciple with a heavenly grade bloodline. At this moment, the elder in charge of recruitment stepped forward to report to the sect leader. Chu Autumn-Sword has already opened up 7 of the 8 extraordinary meridians. Once he opens up one more, he will be able to achieve the supreme martial body. Upon hearing this, old man Zwicho chuckled even more joyfully while stroking his beard. This child is truly a rare talent bestowed by the heavens. At the same time, the master of the third peak spoke up. It has been more than 10 years since the third peak accepted a disciple. Let this disciple join the third peak. Upon hearing this, the master of the second peak immediately responded. The reason why you haven't accepted a disciple in over a decade is simply because you are lazy. Such a rare talent should come to the second peak for the greatest shaping. At this moment, the fifth elder also expressed a desire for the Chu Autumn-Sword. Finally, the master of the seventh peak sneered at the alluring figure of that Yogwai, believing that this little guy would definitely choose me, the seventh peak. After all, who wouldn't want a beautiful master, right? Seeing the peak masters of each peak fighting incessantly, the sect leader decided to stop the quarrel and asked everyone to stop. Coincidentally, the sect leader was in need of one more last disciple, so he decided to have Chu Autumn-Sword join his own first peak. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was speechless. Senior brother Zwicho, do you have any shame left? You already have more than 10 direct disciples at the first peak. How dare you try to poach disciples from us? At this moment, the recruitment elder on the side felt a bit embarrassed and said to the sect leader, Actually, Chu Autumn-Sword has already become a disciple under the fourth peak's master. Upon hearing this, the sect leader and the peak master of the second peak exchanged incredulous expressions and looked at Chui Gracecloud. No wonder fourth junior sister is so calm today. It turns out you had already picked the peaches early on. She instantly darkened her face. It seems that third senior brother is very dissatisfied. Do you want to fight with me? This immediately made Tang Jadefan feel intimidated. He knew that in terms of combat power, other than the sect leader and the sixth peak's John Sun White, probably no one could defeat Chui Gracecloud. Just at this moment, the sky suddenly darkened. All sect leaders saw the situation and hurriedly rushed out of the main hall. Old man Zwicho looked up and noticed that the fourth peak had some unusual activity. Everyone quickly ran towards the fourth peak, and at the same time, a young man had already arrived there. This was none other than Peak Master John Sun White of the sixth peak. The sect leader, who arrived first, immediately asked John Sun White about the situation here. Only to see the fourth peak, the entire mountain peak was surrounded by a purple lightning at the moment, they realized that someone was cultivating the supreme martial body. It seems like that little rascal Chu Autumn-Sword has finally cleared the last meridian. Hearing this, Xianxia looked at everyone in shock. Are you implying that person is a disciple of our sect? Old manhwa explained smugly at this moment. Junior brother Xianxia, you may not know that fourth senior sister just accepted a heavenly grade bloodline disciple in Skywater County. He hasn't joined the sect yet, but he has already opened 7 of the 8 extraordinary meridians. To prevent Xianxia from being concerned, disciple Chui Gracecloud quickly mentioned that Chu Autumn-Sword had already paid respects as a master in Skywater County. Upon hearing this, Xianxia could only feel a sense of regret as he looked at the increasing chi and blood on the 4th peak. The sect leader and Xianxia immediately said to everyone that such aura must not be leaked out, otherwise other sects might spare no effort to eliminate Chu Autumn-Sword. Then the sect leader ordered everyone to work together to block Chu Autumn-Sword's connection with the aura of heaven and earth. Then Chui Gracecloud will activate the Mountain Protection Great Formation. Then Chui Gracecloud took out the 4th peak token and pointed it towards the mountain peak. Instantly, a golden light enveloped the entire mountain peak. At the same time, sect leader and Xianxia flew straight towards the sky. The two of them raised their hands, and with a wave, they shattered the dark clouds in the sky. At this moment, Chu Autumn-Sword is in a critical period of breakthrough. He has not noticed the situation outside at all. Countless golden lights keep emanating from his body. The next moment, these golden lights directly shattered the 4th peak's Mountain Protection Great Formation. Old manhwa finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this situation, as his supreme martial body was finally cultivated. Upon hearing this, Chui Gracecloud immediately used her spiritual sense to check the energy within the 4th peak. After not detecting any leakage of vital chi, she also nodded in agreement. At this point, Xianxia beside him also became excited. Just achieving the initial stage of forming a martial body and already displaying such power. When that little guy grows to our level of cultivation, who knows if we can withstand a single punch from him? In the blink of an eye, half a year passed. Chu Autumn-Sword felt it was time to break through the chi condensation stage. During this half year, not only did he completely eliminate the hidden dangers that had arisen during his previous cultivation, he further cultivated his supreme martial body to achieve perfection body. With the surrounding spiritual chi continuously surging into his body, the violent spiritual chi kept washing his entire body. Suddenly, a loud explosion was heard. Within several miles, not a single blade of grass grew instantly, and a deep pit was also blasted out of the ground. Then, Chu Autumn-Sword slowly crawled out of the deep pit. He hadn't expected that the destructive power caused by breaking through a small chi condensation stage would be so astonishing. He looked at the visible cuts on his clothes. It seemed that the clothes were also scrapped. Most importantly, his dantian expanded hundreds of miles, and he didn't know how much resources would be needed to fill it in the future. After changing into clean clothes, Chu Autumn-Sword went to the main hall of the Mystic Sword Sect. At the Mystic Sword Sect, resources can only be obtained by exchanging contribution points, which are earned by completing tasks. When Chu Autumn-Sword is conflicted about which task to choose, suddenly, a voice from behind called out to him. Chu Autumn-Sword turned around and found out it was Fu Noble Snow calling out to him. Fu Noble Snow excitedly shouted, "Congratulations, senior brother Chu Autumn-Sword, for breaking through the chi condensation stage." A voice suddenly came from outside the door. "To break through the chi condensation stage within half a year of joining the sect, I wonder how you managed to climb to the position of direct disciple." The person who came is a disciple of the Purple Mist Society. Sheman Willow and the president want Peaceflower. Fu Noble Snow told Chu Autumn-Sword that he had joined the Purple Mist Society this time mainly to pick up the Level C mission. The mission requires killing a blood python that is rampaging through a human city, with strength equivalent to a cultivator at the 5th layer of the chi condensation stage. So she asked Chu Autumn-Sword if he would be willing to go together. Chu Autumn-Sword considered that he had never received a mission, and going with them would be the best choice. However, before he could speak, 3 male disciples suddenly sneered and said, "Junior brother Chu's cultivation level is quite low. He may only be able to deliver food to the blood python like he did in the past." At this time, Sea Wind on the side echoed, "So you are Chu Autumn-Sword, just a chi condensation stage 1 cultivator, yet you can become a direct disciple." "Yes, yes, yes. Our leader is already at the chi condensation stage 4 layer, and is just an inner disciple. Some people clearly rely on connections to get ahead." Chu Autumn-Sword heard a group of jesters' words. He did not pay attention to them. Han Silent stepped forward to One Piece Flower's side. "This blood python is not easy to deal with. It's better to have us join forces. What do you think?" One Piece Flower knows that Han Silent is not a good person. Several girls have been mistreated by him before. However, before she could speak, Han Silent directly told her that if she didn't agree, it would be hard to explain to his uncle. Helpless, One Piece Flower could only agree. Shortly after, the group followed the guidance of local villagers and arrived at Crouching Tiger Mountain. However, not long after entering the mountain, Chu Autumn-Sword noticed something unusual. He explained that the vegetation here was tainted with demonic energy. So he speculated that this blood python was probably not as simple as they had imagined. However, except for Fu Noble Snow, the others were not convinced. They only thought that Chu Autumn-Sword was timid and easily scared, regretting bringing him along in the first place. So they asked Chu Autumn-Sword to wait for them here. Later, several people walked further into the depths for a few more miles. They finally found the lair of blood python. However, when blood python revealed its true form, it startled everyone. It turned out to be a snake with a human head, the Yogwai python. Most likely, it is a powerful Yogwai that is transformed into human form. At the same time, sensing something unusual, Chu Autumn-Sword handed 2 spiritual talismans to Fu Noble Snow, telling her that the talismans could protect her from the invasion of Yogwai beasts. Then he asked her to wait for him here. Because he sensed something unusual about the Yogwai beasts, he decided to go check it out himself. At this moment, Fu Noble Snow said, "They are so unkind to you. Even if you go, they won't treat you well. Why not stay here with me then?" He considered that they were his own allies. And he also needed to protect the people in this area. He decided to go and see for himself. On the other side, faced with the blood python transformed into the great Yogwai. They have long lost their combat power. Because this kind of Yogwai, its strength is already equivalent to a cultivator at the ocean conversion stage. So they are conscious that they are simply not opponents at all. At this time, Sheman Willow only then remembered what Chu Autumn-Sword had said before. She regretted not listening to Chu Autumn-Sword back then. One Piece Flower tells everyone, "As long as we work together to break out, this Yogwai python may not necessarily be able to stop us." The Yogwai python who heard this remark sneered, "Look around and see what has become of everything. Do you think you can still escape?" At this point, Han Silent realized that this was the Yogwai formation, and it was impossible for them to break through the Yogwai python. Seeing this, the Yogwai python laughed heartily and said, "In these few days, I have only been able to devour some ordinary folks. Being able to feast on martial artists like you with abundant blood chi is truly a great supplement." With that, it suddenly opened its huge mouth, bared its fangs, and charged towards them. The man had not reacted yet. He was swallowed whole by the blood python without a direct response. On the side, Sea Wind was so scared that he dared not move. One Piece Flower then leaped up and shot an arrow towards blood python swiftly. However, when that arrow landed on Yogwai python, it was instantly bounced off. The next moment, Yogwai python flashed to her side. Just at this moment, a huge fireball suddenly smashed into Yogwai python. "Who is it? How dare they sneak attack me?" Chu Autumn-Sword slowly walked out at the sound of that. "It is quite impressive that a beast like you reacted so quickly, or else that strike could have been enough to take your life." Seeing Chu Autumn-Sword approaching, One Piece Flower and Sheman Willow both felt pleased. Quickly form a formation. This beast is injured and is now no match for us. Upon hearing this, everyone took up a position and surrounded the Yogwai Python, looking at Chu Autumn-Sword with a face full of killing intent. The Yogwai Python didn't take them seriously at all. Even if I am injured, how could a group of useless individuals like you be my match? At this moment, Si Win took the lead and said, "You're still so arrogant even when injured. Today, I will be the first one to kill you." At that moment, several others also rushed forward with their swords. However, Si Win had not even touched Yogwai Python when his arm was bitten off by Yogwai Python. "Just based on your group of ants, you dare to challenge me," but at this moment, Chu Autumn-Sword has already arrived behind him with sevenfold furious wave palm. Just saw that Chu Autumn-Sword gathered a large amount of spiritual chi in his palm, and the next second, he fiercely palm strike hit the abdomen of Yogwai Python with just one blow. Yogwai Python was sent flying by Chu Autumn-Sword. Sheman Willow and One Piece Flower on the side were shocked and said, "Can a chi condensation stage martial artist really deliver such a blow?" At first, I was thinking of giving this kid a lesson, but looking at the current situation, it seems that he could easily crush me with one palm. Han Silent, on the other hand, looked at Chu Autumn-Sword with jealousy, wondering why people with such extraordinary talents always seem to oppose me. Just then, Sheman Willow suddenly shouted, "Be careful!" Wait until Chu Autumn-Sword reacted. Blood Python instantly whipped its tail at his waist. Immediately, a mouthful of blood gushed out of Chu Autumn-Sword's mouth. The successful blow made Blood Python feel pleased. "You little brat, do you really think you can deal with me?" Suddenly, Blood Python's blood chi around his body began to rise rapidly as he concentrated his strength on his tail. Then it unleashed a series of 5 whips towards Chu Autumn-Sword. However, Chu Autumn-Sword remained completely unfazed by this. He allowed the attacks from Blood Python to land on himself. One Piece Flower couldn't bear to watch, covering her eyes. At that moment, the attacks that were originally aimed at Chu Autumn-Sword were unexpectedly blocked by a light barrier. Blood Python was startled by this turn of events. One Piece Flower on the side looked even more incredulous. Because Chu Autumn-Sword unexpectedly used spiritual power to transform into a shield and block the attack, Blood Python saw Chu Autumn-Sword walk over slowly and asked in puzzlement, "I clearly injured you badly just now. How could you recover so quickly?" Chu Autumn-Sword just smiled faintly at the question, knowing that he had cultivated an unparalleled martial body. As long as his chi and blood were not depleted, his body could heal endlessly. However, Blood Python would not be convinced, saying, "You, a mere chi condensation stage waste, dare to boast shamelessly in front of me?" Seeing Blood Python preparing to attack again, Chu Autumn-Sword then gathered all his spiritual power in the palm of his hand. The mere emanation of his aura made the nearby disciples shiver all over. Chu Autumn-Sword then readily met the attack of the Blood Python with a palm strike. The next second, an energy gathered from vital chi blasted onto the body of the Blood Python. Intense pain forced the Blood Python to let out a miserable cry, and then its body slammed violently onto the ground. At this moment, the blood-covered Blood Python lay on the ground. Chu Autumn-Sword, seeing this, slowly walked up. Just as he was preparing to deliver a fatal blow to the Blood Python, the Blood Python suddenly stood up, ready to escape. Si Wind on the side immediately shouted, "Not good, that beast is trying to flee." Upon hearing this, One Piece Flower quickly pulled the bowstring. She chuckled as the arrow struck the tail of the Blood Python. At this moment, Chu Autumn-Sword had already caught up with the Blood Python. He transformed his spiritual power into a blade and swiftly chopped off the head of the Blood Python. After this battle, Chu Autumn-Sword's physical strength has almost been depleted. Although the supreme martial body can quickly recover from injuries, but the consumption of physical strength is indeed quite significant. One Piece Flower standing beside couldn't believe it, so she said in shock, "Junior brother Chu, you actually killed the Blood Python by yourself." Si Wind then stepped forward and said, Brother, you are really capable. I see Wind, admire you. However, at this moment, Han Silent, who had been silent all along, suddenly sneered and said, How come you guys are getting all lovey-dovey now? Upon hearing this, One Piece Flower immediately sensed that something was not right, so she quickly asked Han Silent what he was up to. Han Silent pulled out the sword at his waist, grinned, and said, You ask me what I'm up to? Of course, I'm going to kill him. One Piece Flower quickly warned him that killing a fellow member of the sect is a capital offense. The man laughed heartily upon hearing this. Nobody will know that I killed you all because you all died at the hands of the blood python. And I am the one who killed the blood python to avenge you all. See, Wind explained that his brother is one of the top 10 disciples of inner sect. If you killed me, my brother will not let you go. However, Han Silent said after hearing this that he would give him a quick death. At this moment, Sheman Willow was so frightened that he knelt on the ground, begging senior brother Han not to kill him. He promised not to reveal this matter. But Han Silent coldly said, I only trust dead people. Only the dead can keep secrets. Immediately after, Chu Autumn-Sword, who had regained some strength, slowly stood up and asked, Are you so certain that you have us under your control? Han Silent broke out in a cold sweat upon hearing this. Stop pretending to be strong. The battle just now has already drained all your strength, he said. Even a waste at the chi refining stage can kill you now. However, at the same time he was speaking, his hand holding the knife was actually trembling constantly. Later, he gathered up the courage and struck Chu Autumn-Sword's neck with a single blow. His head was chopped off, but it was not Chu Autumn-Sword's head, it was his own. Sheman Willow, who was standing beside, was directly frightened by this scene, because the person who chopped off Han Silent's head turned out to be Fu Noble Snow. This is the first time Fu Noble Snow has killed someone. Chu Autumn-Sword stood by and encouraged her, saying, Well done, a single strike to kill. After dealing with Han Silent, the group began to discuss how to handle the body of the blood python. Because the body of the blood python is full of treasures, they are determined to bring it back to the sect no matter what, but at the moment, they have no means of transportation. At this moment, Chu Autumn-Sword took out a token from his bosom. Half an hour later, a flying boat slowly sailed over. The person who came as senior sister Zhuqiu Autumn Bamboo of Chu Autumn-Sword. Zhuqiu Autumn Bamboo got off the flying boat and saw the body of a transformed great Yogwai lying on the ground. She immediately asked Chu Autumn-Sword to give him an explanation. Chu Autumn-Sword explained the ins and outs of the matter. The next moment, he was scolded angrily by Zhuqiu Autumn Bamboo. When encountering a powerful transformed great Yogwai, one should run away quickly. You're afraid that I won't be able to stay as a senior sister for long. Onlookers around all shifted their gaze aside, pretending as if they hadn't seen anything. Afterwards, Zhuqiu Autumn Bamboo shifted his gaze to Han Silent's body. Han Silent dared to attack a member of the fourth peak. He should consider himself lucky to die like this. Otherwise, if he fell into my hands, death would be a mercy for him. As soon as these words were spoken, Sheman Willow was immediately scared, with cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. It is rumored that the people of the fourth peak are all madmen and especially ruthless. It seems that the rumors are not false. Later, the group flew back to the sect on the flying boat. When they arrived at the Mission Grand Hall to exchange contribution points, Chu Autumn-Sword was shocked to hear that he could exchange for 700 contribution points. The disciple who distributes contribution points told Chu Autumn-Sword, Because you killed a great Yogwai that has transformed, your level has been upgraded to level A. Chu Autumn-Sword did not monopolize the contribution points this time. He instead requested to evenly distribute these contribution points among the few people who went with him. Sheman Willow and One Piece Flower, who heard this, had looks of admiration in their eyes. With these contribution points, Chu Autumn-Sword can go exchange for some cultivating resources, which will help sustain him for a while. The man is trying to refine a Dan pill for the first time. He only took half an hour. He successfully refined 50 top-tier spiritual Dan in just half an hour, and all 50 ingredients he used were successfully refined. It turns out that in the past month, besides taking on tasks at the sect to earn contribution points, Chu Autumn-Sword also secretly went to the trading market to sell the spiritual talismans and Dan pills he drew himself. I only saw him take out a paper kite and throw it into the air. The next second, the paper kite unexpectedly turned into a flying boat, pulling him flying towards the mountain. Chu Autumn-Sword arrived at the trading market and then found 2 disciples to cooperate with. Because this trading market was set up privately by the Mystic Sword sect disciples, Chu Autumn-Sword, in order to conceal his identity, named himself Skywater. The man smiled gratefully and thanked Chu Autumn-Sword, saying that if it weren't for Brother Skywater's spiritual talisman, the 2 of them would probably have died in the mythic realm trial long ago, let alone have the opportunity to gain any fortunes inside. The sect is about to open a new trial in the mythic realm. I wonder if Brother Skywater has prepared everything in advance. Chu Autumn-Sword placed his hands on 2 boxes. Everything is here. At the moment the boxes were opened, 2 disciples widened their eyes and let out a loud scream, as they discovered that all were top-tier treasures. But right after seeing that the price marked for the Chu Autumn-Sword was 500 contribution points, the 2 couldn't help but feel a little disheartened. Skywater's items are good, but this price is a bit too expensive. This time, can I buy a few more items from Skywater? Can you offer a discount? Chu Autumn-Sword explained. These spiritual talismans can be used to save lives at critical moments. Their value is immeasurable. How could you still find fault with them? After speaking, he slammed the box shut. If you don't want to buy, then forget it. Don't hinder my business here. The man's face immediately changed color. As long as he could buy a spiritual talisman from Chu Autumn-Sword, it would be like adding an extra life for himself. However, they do not have enough contribution points. So, they are planning to exchange some other things with Chu Autumn-Sword. This is a second-grade top-tier defense artifact called Serpent King's Celestial Armor. Even facing a martial artist at the Chi Condensation Stage 9 layer, it is impossible to break through its defense in a short time. Chu Autumn-Sword picked it up and found it in good condition, worth 2 escaping talismans. Upon hearing this, the 2 people were stunned for a moment. Only 2 talismans? Brother, isn't that too little? Chu Autumn-Sword looked furious and said, Your artifact can only withstand attacks from the Chi Condensation Stage 9 layer, but my escaping talisman can exchange for 2 lives from you. Do you think that's too little? After picking up the 2 paper talismans of the Chu Autumn-Sword, the man thought for a while, and still believed that exchanging for the escaping talisman was more cost-effective. At this time, another disciple took out some metal ore and handed it to Chu Autumn-Sword. Although I do not know what this thing is, I can guarantee that its grade is definitely above 3 tier. Chu Autumn-Sword saw this thing, and his eyes lit up instantly, feeling secretly delighted. This is indeed a 4-tier Crimson Sunstorm crystal ore. Just by adding a trace of it to the artifact, the performance of the artifact can be greatly enhanced. Even a piece as small as a thumb can be sold for a sky-high price. This person clearly doesn't know the value. So Chu Autumn-Sword immediately offered 3,000 contribution points for him to choose freely between a spiritual talisman and a Dan pill of equivalent value. As soon as the 2 heard this, they immediately took out valuable items from themselves, eager to do more business with Chu Autumn-Sword. Watching the 2 dig out their belongings, Chu Autumn-Sword felt a bit speechless. Suddenly, a voice rang out. Isn't this junior brother Shui and senior brother Ma? The man turned around, looking puzzled, and asked, Weren't you supposed to go down the mountain for training? How come you are appearing here? Shortly after, this disciple revealed some news. The new Marsh Mythic Realm will be opening soon. All inner disciples, regardless of where they are, must return to the sect to participate. The sect places great importance on this Mythic Realm event. It looks like 80% of the people from the Bloodbane sect are going to stir up trouble again. Moreover, it is said that there is something they want in the Mythic Realm. Once they obtain it, No power in the Great Qin dynasty can resist them. The discussions of a few people were all heard by Chu Autumn-Sword. Immediately he took out his paper kite, carrying a big bag of exchanged treasures, and flew towards the fourth peak. But he kept wondering in his heart what the Bloodbane sect would want, as he had just returned to the sect after completing a mission. The next second, he was forcibly dragged by his senior sister to meet their master. Just as he entered Cui Gracecloud's sleeping hall, he saw him sitting pale-faced on the bed. She said that today she would impart the martial arts of the fourth peak to him. Chu Autumn-Sword looked puzzled and said, "Master, you look extremely pale. There's no rush to impart martial arts at this moment." Cui Gracecloud took a deep breath and said, "If I don't pass it on to you now, I'm afraid there won't be a chance in the future." Chu Autumn-Sword was greatly surprised and asked, "Why did Master say such a thing?" At that moment, Zhuqiu Autumn Bamboo on the side said, "Master accidentally got hit by the blood-shade nether venom during the battle with the demonic beings from the Bloodbane sect. Please rest assured, Master. When the new Marsh Mythic Realm opens, your disciple will definitely search for the astral wormgrass of the celestial pivot inside to detoxify you." Cui Gracecloud was instantly furious upon hearing these words. "Do you know the risks of forcibly suppressing the stage? If you dare to disobey the Master's orders and lower the stage to enter the new Marsh Mythic Realm without authorization, the Master will definitely expel you from the sect." But Zhuqiu Autumn Bamboo has made up her mind. She said that even if she is expelled from the sect, she will never stand by and watch the Master's life hanging by a thread. Chu Autumn-Sword patted Zhuqiu Autumn Bamboo's shoulder. He gestured for her to go out and wait, leaving this matter for him to handle. Zhuqiu Autumn Bamboo left. Cui Gracecloud looked at young boy Chu solemnly. "You have cultivated into the supreme martial body, and are at the same stage where no one can rival you. You must have gained some powerful inheritance." Chu Autumn-Sword looked shocked because since he was betrayed by Lu Heaven Jade, he has made up his mind not to tell his secrets to anyone. But he was still noticed by the woman in front of him. Cui Gracecloud condensed a ball of flame on her finger. "Even though you already have your own technique and art, the teacher will still teach you the technique and art of the fourth peak. As for whether to learn or not, it's up to you to decide." With that, she raised her hand and smeared the ball of flame into Chu Autumn-Sword's forehead. "This is our sect's fundamental mental technique and the highest martial arts, named Water Moonlit Crystal Dual Art and Azure Crystal Skyward Sword Technique. Technique and art enter Chu Autumn-Sword's consciousness see, and he is immediately enlightened. The heritage of the Mystic Sword sect is indeed profound. As soon as Cui Gracecloud made a move, she imparted all 15 layers of the Earth-grade Azure Crystal Skyward Sword Technique to Chu Autumn-Sword over the course of half an hour. She couldn't wait to pull him out of the door immediately afterward, saying she wanted to give him a demonstration. Chu Autumn-Sword looked at Cui Gracecloud with a look of concern on her face. But he still followed her guidance and arrived at the cliff of the fourth peak. Cui Gracecloud mustered the last of her spiritual power and waved the spiritual sword in her hand. She was light as a swallow. Every sword she waved would bring about extraordinary phenomena in the world. Chu Autumn-Sword looked at the scene in front of her. Is this the power of a nascent core stage expert? Cui Gracecloud demonstrated the Azure Crystal Skyward Sword technique in full to Chu Autumn-Sword. Then she also gave him the Autumn Water Sword in her hand. Chu Autumn-Sword was about to speak when his master instructor interrupted. "You don't actually need to." Before he could finish his sentence, he saw Cui Gracecloud suddenly collapse. Chu Autumn-Sword quickly leaped down and held her in his arms. Immediately, he used Vital Chi to examine Cui Gracecloud's entire body. The results of the examination left him incredulous. The poison had already eroded her internal organs. Without an antidote, she might not survive much longer. Chu Autumn-Sword only saw a drop of blood forming from his forehead. This is his lifebound essence blood. He merges the lifebound essence blood into Cui Gracecloud's body. He hopes that this will slow down the rate of poison erosion. After Chu Autumn-Sword sent Cui Gracecloud back to the bedroom palace. Immediately following, Mystic Sword sect leader and the 7th peak elder rushed over. After Lin Sylvia finished taking her pulse, she looked at Chui Gracecloud lying on the bed, with some confusion. In theory, Boris Senior Sister's forcible use of the Azure Crystal Skyward Sword technique just now would surely aggravate the injury and trigger the poison to erupt. But now it seems Boris Senior Sister's primordial energy appears to be much more vigorous than before. This is truly a strange occurrence. Chu Autumn-Sword on the side couldn't help but sigh inwardly at the words, "Thanks to that drop of my life-bound essence blood." At this moment, Chu Autumn-Bamboo looked excitedly at Lin Sylvia, meaning, will Master slowly recover? Lin Sylvia shook her head, saying, "This is only temporary. Without the antidote for blood-shade nether venom. From the current condition of For Senior Sister, she can only last for a maximum of 3 months. Chu Autumn-Bamboo was suddenly shocked. Her head spun, almost stumbling and falling down, but luckily Chu Autumn-Sword beside her quickly caught her. The two of them then left the sleeping palace and arrived at the cliff. Chu Autumn-Sword reminded Chu Autumn-Bamboo that the night breeze was chilly, and if she caught a cold, it might worry their master. Chu Autumn-Bamboo replied with a firm gaze, "I must go to the new Marsh mythic realm." Chu Autumn-Sword was a bit puzzled by this. What kind of place is the new Marsh mythic realm, after all? He had heard about the new Marsh mythic realm back at the trading market in Western Sun Peak from another senior brother. It seemed to involve something that the Bloodbane sect was very interested in obtaining. So Chu Autumn-Sword asked Senior Sisters Chu Autumn-Bamboo whether the Bloodbane sect sought-after item in the new Marsh mythic realm was the material for refining the blood-shade nether venom. Chu Autumn-Bamboo nodded in agreement and explained further. At first, we only knew that the toxicity of blood-shade nether venom was very weak, posing no threat to strong cultivators at the nascent core stage. Therefore, more than 10 years ago, even though we knew someone from the Bloodbane sect had taken it out of the new Marsh mythic realm, we did not pay much attention to it. It wasn't until recently, during the battle between Master and the people from the Bloodbane sect, that 7th sect leader discovered that the source of the poison in Master's wound was actually the blood-shade nether venom. This substance was refined by the Bloodbane sect leader, and its toxicity has at least doubled. Just a drop of it can cause fatal injuries to a nascent core stage expert. Not only that, this time the Bloodbane sect even plans to use blood-shade nether venom to refine the mystic demon blood beast, a fiend beast powerful enough to annihilate the entire dynasty. Chu Autumn-Sword has another question, which is about the entrance to the new Marsh mythic realm. The entrance has always been guarded by the Mystic Sword sect. So, how did the Bloodbane sect manage to enter the new Marsh mythic realm? Chu Autumn-Bamboo told him that initially they thought there was a spy within the sect, but after further investigation, they discovered that the Bloodbane sect had found a new entrance to the new Marsh mythic realm. At this time, Old Man Zwichio walked over. "I have ordered all inner disciples to enter the new Marsh mythic realm to find the antidote. But Bamboo, you must stay on the 4th peak, or don't blame Daddy for being heartless." After saying this, he disappeared in a flash right where he stood. Chu Autumn-Sword looked at Chu Autumn-Bamboo with a puzzled expression on his face. "Why did both the sect leader and master forbid you from entering the new Marsh mythic realm?" Chu Autumn-Bamboo is a bit helpless, because the new Marsh mythic realm only allows martial artists at the chi condensation stage to enter. Since I have reached the ocean conversion stage, I must forcefully suppress my stage to enter. Chu Autumn-Sword was suddenly shocked, because forcibly suppressing the stage comes with great risks. Carelessness could lead to being forever stuck at the chi condensation stage. However, Chu Autumn-Bamboo's eyes were unusually determined. "My master and father are the most important people to me. I cannot stand by and watch without trying to save them. My father must be busy preparing the internal resources. Disciple, I will go to the entrance of New Marsh mythic realm now and wait. When the time comes, I will forcefully charge in." Upon hearing this, Chu Autumn-Sword immediately stopped her. "Senior sister, I will go in your place." But Chu Autumn-Bamboo promptly vetoed. "Do you even know what kind of place that is? Countless powerful demons reside there. The mortality rate of inner disciples who enter is as high as 80% every year. Chu Autumn-Sword just smiled at this. Senior sister, have you forgotten? That blood python is also a transformed great Yogwai, but it ended up dead in my hands. Chu Autumn-Bamboo sighed helplessly and bowed his head. Master is poisoned. Senior sister is in seclusion again. Little junior brother, you must stay safe. But Chu Autumn-Sword is exceptionally confident, saying, whether it's the astral wormgrass of the celestial pivot or the blood-shade nether venom, I will bring them back. This is an entrance to the mythic realm. Inside the mythic realm not only nurtures countless rare treasures, but also hides many great opportunities. Therefore, all inner disciples at the chi condensation stage of the mystic sword sect will enter the new Marsh mythic realm. The sect assigns 2 tasks to each disciple. One is to stop the Bloodbane sect disciple from collecting the blood-shade nether venom. Secondly, the rewards for completing the tasks of collecting astral wormgrass of the celestial pivot are both very generous. Just completing the second task alone can earn you 500,000 contribution points. He can also choose to become one of the 7 Peaks direct disciples, and if he is lucky enough to encounter opportunities, it might even help them break through the ocean conversion stage in one go. This time entering the new Marsh mythic realm, Chu Autumn-Sword also quietly followed along. At this moment, the entrance of new Marsh mythic realm is already crowded with people. The 7th Peak Elder stood at the entrance and slowly began to speak. This is the entrance to the new Marsh mythic realm. The mythic realm is dangerous. I hope everyone returns safely. Upon hearing these words, the disciples quickly crowded around and rushed towards the entrance. Chu Autumn-Sword also entered the mythic realm. He just opened his eyes and felt the spiritual chi of this place. He was surprised to find that the mist in the mythic realm was actually transformed spiritual chi. Therefore, it's not surprising that this place can nurture heavenly materials and earthly treasures. At this moment, an idea suddenly popped into his head. If he were to cultivate here, the speed of cultivation would be several times faster compared to the outside world. Chu Autumn-Sword had just come to his senses when he noticed 2 men were staring at him intently. One of them sneered and said, is the mystic sword sect lacking people now, sending a trash like a chi condensation stage 3 layer here? Are they trying to offer us a sacrifice? Chu Autumn-Sword was speechless at his bad luck. The first group of people he encountered inside were disciples from the Bloodbane sect. Immediately, a Bloodbane sect disciple leaped towards Chu Autumn-Sword and launched an attack. Kid, you should feel honored to become the first welcoming gift for me to enter the mythic realm. Facing the attack from the Bloodbane sect disciple, Chu Autumn-Sword remained extremely calm. After a loud and violent explosion, another disciple of the Bloodbane sect turned around in surprise, because he saw his companion spitting blood and lying dead on the ground, while Chu Autumn-Sword remained unharmed and stood still in place. The man was greatly shocked at the scene. How could this be possible? That kid actually killed an opponent 3 stages higher than himself with just 1 strike. Immediately, he released his surrounding spiritual chi. So, it turns out you are a hidden master, but unfortunately, you have met me today. I will make sure you accompany my junior brother to the grave today. After saying that, he immediately launched an attack towards Chu Autumn-Sword. However, no matter how fiercely the man attacked, he couldn't touch Chu Autumn-Sword at all. Chu Autumn-Sword thought to himself that despite having cultivated for so long, he never truly engaged in combat. This time, he could finally get some hands-on practice. After a while, the man, sweating profusely, looked at Chu Autumn-Sword and thought to himself, I've been fighting for so long, and that kid has been dodging for so long, yet he hasn't shown any signs of vital chi depletion. How can this kid be so abnormal? If this continues, I'll probably end up losing to this kid. I need to come up with a way to escape. So the man gathered his spiritual power again and shouted loudly. Chu Autumn-Sword saw the situation. He thought that the other party might be about to unleash a powerful move. The next second, he saw the other party disappearing in a flash and running away into the distance. Seeing this, Chu Autumn-Sword just smiled faintly. At the same time, the news of Chu Autumn-Sword entering the new March mythic realm reached the ears of the sect leader of Mystic Sword sect, making the old man furious upon hearing the news. The seventh elder explained that she had just seen a disciple at the entrance of the new March mythic realm. The figure is very similar to Chu Autumn-Sword. Old man Zhuqiu frowned when he heard this. Chu Autumn-Sword is the hope for revitalizing our Mystic Sword sect. If anything happens to him, it would definitely be the biggest loss in the history of our Mystic Sword sect. At this moment, a female disciple suddenly ran into the council hall, shouting, "Something is not right. After senior sister's Zhuqiu knocked me out, I don't know where she went." The man took out a spiritual talisman. Then he pasted the spiritual talisman on his thigh. Instantly, his speed increased tenfold. Turns out he was chasing after a disciple of the Bloodbane sect. The chased Bloodbane sect disciple was suddenly shocked. So he used his best move, Blood Shadow Palm and Chu Autumn-Sword, while also gathering spiritual power to unleash sevenfold Furious Wave Palm. The two exchanged blows with their palms. The next moment, a violent surge of spiritual power almost instantly destroyed the body of the Bloodbane sect disciple. He was then blasted away by a golden spiritual power. Chu Autumn-Sword felt somewhat surprised by this because with his current strength, he could only unleash the sevenfold Furious Wave Palm at most to 70% of its power. However, even so, the power was still astonishingly great. He then took out the token of the fourth peak. This kind of token is made of special materials. It can be used to record the number and strength of Bloodbane sect disciples one has killed. He only needs to collect the blood chi of the deceased to record the strength of the Bloodbane sect disciple on the token and convert it into the corresponding contribution points. In addition to the first Bloodbane sect disciple he killed, he has now accumulated 900 contribution points. Suddenly, a cry for help sounded from a distance. Chu Autumn-Sword recognized from the voice that the person calling for help was One Piece Flower, so he immediately used the escaping talisman to find her. Upon examination, he discovered that One Piece Flower's internal organs were all shattered. If she does not receive timely treatment, she will undoubtedly die. Chu Autumn-Sword placed both palms on One Piece Flower's back. He input the vital chi cultivated from the chaotic heavenly emperor manual into her body. This vital chi contains profound power, capable of instantly healing even the most severe injuries. After a moment, One Piece Flower spit out a mouthful of stagnant blood. Chu Autumn-Sword saw this and asked her not to speak for the time being. Then he took out a ninefold rejuvenating restoration dan and swallowed it. In the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, you will be restored to your original state. However, just at this moment, a body of a Mystic Sword sect disciple suddenly flew over. It looks like they were killed by having their internal organs shattered again. Soon, a group of Bloodbane sect disciples also slowly emerged. The leader of the group gathered spiritual power in his hand and smugly said, "Little lady, let me send you on your way." Just as the man's palm was about to land on the woman in front of him, Chu Autumn-Sword suddenly made a move and intercepted the man's hand. Before the man could react, the next moment, he was directly struck by Chu Autumn-Sword, causing him to vomit blood. Then, he was sent flying by a golden energy wave. This scene immediately frightens the Bloodbane sect disciple who came along. This person is a monster, run quickly. But they have not taken the first step yet. Chu Autumn-Sword instantly performs a Z-flicker. He quickly took out two opponents. The saved girl looked at Chu Autumn-Sword with great joy. This talent, at Chi Condensation Stage 3 layer, can easily defeat a Bloodbane sect disciple at Chi Condensation Stage 9 layer. What kind of incredible talent must he have? Following that, two disciples from the Mystic Sword sect walked over. I, Ling Heavenly Rainian Deep Abyss, dare to ask how fellow disciples should address you. Chu Autumn-Sword heard your words. He cupped his hands to indicate that he is a direct disciple of the fourth peak. Realizing that Chu Autumn-Sword's identity is that of a direct disciple, the woman next to him suddenly understood. No wonder his skills are so profound. My name is Tan Carolina. Please teach me a lot in the future, junior brother. After getting to know each other a bit, suddenly a voice caught Chu Autumn-Sword's attention. When he turned around, he realized that the person was actually his old acquaintance, Ouyang Abyss. However, the current Ouyang Abyss made Chu Autumn-Sword feel somewhat unfamiliar because even though these two appeared to only have the strength of Qi condensation stage 8 layer, but they gave Chu Autumn-Sword a very dangerous feeling. They are suspected to have mastered some kind of technique and art from the Bloodbane sect. Lu Heaven Jade looked at Chu Autumn-Sword with mixed feelings. If I hadn't been mistaken back then, the person standing next to him now would be me. As a result, this move was immediately noticed by Ouyang Abyss. Keep your eyes in check. Now you belong to me. Lu Heaven Jade impatiently pushed away Ouyang Abyss's hand. I don't need your reminder. A few people's conversation was heard by the disciple from Mystic Sword sect behind them. Junior brother Chu, even if you are colluding with Bloodbane sect as a direct disciple, it is still a capital offense. Chu Autumn-Sword smiled when he heard this. I do know them, but they came to deliver some heads. Chu Autumn-Sword's words made the disciples of Mystic Sword sect look at each other in silence, too afraid to say more. But this made Ouyang Abyss, who was standing aside and brazenly laughing, chuckle. Killing you would dirty this young master's hands. You all go for me. Take the dog's life of that waste. The Bloodbane sect disciple who received the order immediately drew his sword and stabbed towards Chu Autumn-Sword. Tan Carolina, who was behind Chu Autumn-Sword, took the lead and intercepted this sword before Chu Autumn-Sword could make a move. Junior brother Chu, you just saved us, so of course we won't abandon you. After a fierce battle, only Ouyang Abyss and Lu Heaven Jade from Bloodbane sect disciples remained. Ouyang Abyss was so furious that the veins on his face bulged out. How dare you ruin my good fortune? Then just go and die! With these words, he raised his hand and struck towards Tan Carolina. At the same time, Chu Autumn-Sword also made a move. He stepped up to Tan Carolina and formed a golden light in his palm, ready to forcefully take the blow. Then a violent explosion ripped apart the surrounding ground. After the thick smoke dispersed, everyone discovered that Chu Autumn-Sword was still standing in place unharmed. This scene made Ouyang Abyss unable to believe it. How could this be possible? Lu Heaven Jade's expression became extremely ugly, and Ouyang Abyss, who cultivated the devil technique of the Bloodbane sect at the ocean conversion stage, was unbeatable. But Chu Autumn-Sword managed to fight him to a draw with only a Qi condensation stage 3 layer cultivation. Given time, he will definitely become a dominating figure in the region. At this moment, Ouyang Abyss is thoroughly enraged. He stomped his feet, and his spiritual power exploded instantly all over his body. I didn't use my full strength just now with that palm strike. Now, I will show you my true power. After speaking, a skull formed by gathering demonic chi lit up behind him. The person standing behind Chu Autumn-Sword felt doomed. This is the highest stage of the blood shadow palm. Once touched, one would dissolve into blood. However, Chu Autumn-Sword stood motionless in place. He let Ouyang Abyss's blood palm submerge himself. After Chu Autumn-Sword completely entered the demonic chi of Ouyang Abyss, he was astounded to find that these demonic chi also contained potent poison. However, Chu Autumn-Sword had cultivated the supreme martial body and was immune to their effects. Then, he released all the spiritual power around him outward. He struck out with his palm at the demonic chi in front of him. In this situation, Ouyang Abyss obviously did not expect it. He was directly slapped away by that golden palm, which scared Lu Heaven Jade, making his face turn pale, sevenfold furious wave palm.